Hey everybody, this is Perch, and welcome. It's Friday. We weren't on last week. I'm drinking. I think some people are joining me, but we'll see when people are coming. So yeah, 2 minutes late. Sorry, it's a new computer. I'll go through that story and stupid, got to reset all the permissions for things. So yeah, seeing there's an ad on the other computer. It's all crazy. But anyway, glad you're here. We have some things to talk about. Like I said, I think some people are joining us, but if they don't, that's okay. There's kind of an awkward, weird kind of schedule here. We'll do a stream tonight, maybe a little shorter. And then I think we're doing a special Saturday stream tomorrow, which is weird. But Jimmy, who's got his own channel, and we wanted to get him on for a while, we're trying to work around his work schedule. So I may be back on again with Jimmy here as well. So lots going on, but it's in a way. Hopefully the folks who are going to join me join. If they don't, we'll figure it out. But there is some stuff to talk about. I've got some numbers and some good things, and it will work itself out. Also, it's good to every now and then just do this with all of you, and I can answer your questions, and good things happening all around. So how was, hopefully everybody had a good week. Mine started with the my primary computer here just decided the screen is dead and it doesn't want to work anymore, which is always a wonderful thing. So this prompted going to quickly get a new machine and transfer information. And so it was a very hectic week. And in the midst of all that, I got what I think it's like Christmas time. I got a bunch of numbers. So what do I mean by a bunch of numbers? I mean sales numbers for the newsstand from about the 50s through the 90s for Marvel, DC, and a bunch of indies. I've been looking for these for I'm probably no hype for about 20 years. So it's amazing. They check out. And so now I'm going through them. I was very tempted with the computer going down and everything else. I'm like, I'm going to get on the phone and just tell people, you know what? Screw it. The channel's going dark for a week. I will talk to you all later, and we're just going to go through these numbers and put a bunch of stuff. But I've been telling a lot of people, hey, I don't have reliable numbers for like the Claremont run, and so I can't do it. Sorry. Okay, not true anymore. I think I'm going to be able to get you some really amazing things. So very, very excited to show you all that. So you're going to love it. It's just cool. We'll all nerd out on numbers together. It's yes, it's nerdy, but that's where we are. Anyway, I also cannot believe I have not used this picture before for a live stream. It seems like it was just made for me, except all these glasses are empty, but I guess he's drawn them all. Anyway, all good stuff. So definitely I was not hanging out with the cool kids last week. This could not be further from the truth. I love the comic retailer community. I mean, there's some good people there. Absolutely. Hey, Breen, you should jump on here with me. Just shoot me a note. Nobody else can show up, but always, by the way, if you want to be on the show, kind of just reach out and we can make that happen. But I love the retailers. I love what they're trying to do. It's a tough business and everything else, but I cannot begin to tell you how aggravating it is to basically, have these people who there are really obvious improvements that could be made to a business, and they choose not to do it. It's madness. It could be the simplest freaking thing in the world. Anyway, I don't get it. Yes, Breen, I will send you a link. That'll be great. We can have a nice little casual chat. I have way too many messages here in the stupid old. Good God, how could my freaking email is out of control. Anyway, here we go. We'll see if we can do that. Also, I think Joe weighs in, letting me know that I have more subs than the Image Comics official YouTube channel. So that's fun. There you go. I don't. God damn it! It is very strange. All right. So what are we drinking here today? Well, here it's a margarita for me. So that's always fun. This is a fun little drink. I like to dump a bunch of jalapenos in here. I don't know about you guys. I think it makes for a really, really nice drink. So if it's insanely, you get the tequila taste, you get the jalapeno taste. It's quite a combo. I recommend this highly if you can take it. If you do this right, it can be really, really spicy and crazy. But If I want to hurt us, use the final page of Captain Marvel 17. Will do. I do want to hurt you. I want to hurt everybody. That's definitely so. I don't have. Wait, hang on. Do many retailers you don't know personally? Yes, quite a few retailers I think follow this channel. I had an awkward moment where a retailer was talking to another retailer about this channel while I was in the room, but didn't make the connection, and that was awkward and weird. But I think enough people now. There's enough reveal at the Comics Pro that people know who I am. I'm gonna get doxxed pretty good. So anyway. It's okay. I don't mind. That's part of why I cleaned up. You saw the picture in the community there. I cleaned up the drawing table there. I tried to tidy it all up, both to do some drawing, but also in theory, if I'm still waiting for the stupid store to open up, then I just turn the camera around, and just shoot it from there, and it'll be nice. I hate it when and no shade to anybody, but when they're doing a live stream and behind them it looks like a just explosion just blew up right behind them. like tidy that room up. Anyway, it's stupid. There you go. All right. So anyway, margarita, throw some jalapenos in there. It's cheap, it's easy, it's cool. If you want to use that blowtorch trick that I did a video on like a year and a half ago, that's good too. All good. And then I think that fits really nicely with this classic cover we'll look at later. This is an awesome little Iron Man cover. I like the drama. In the morning, Tony Stark will be sober or dead. It's this subtlety was there was just not as much subtlety back then. Anyway, don't I live in Antifa? I mean, technically every part of the country is Antifa country, I think. No, it's all tame out here. I mean, I live outside of Seattle, where a lot of my neighbors have guns. I will just say. Do I have to have 40 years of experience to join the Friday stream? No, just have some fun. I was just actually talking to my buddy Ryan, we're about to tape the Supergirl retrospective of that movie, which is just going to be crazy. And he needs to join the stream as well. He has a very cynical view of some comics. It's all good. I always like my margaritas on the rocks, by the way. Only way, I think. Anyway. Dad advice and comics advice. That's right. All right. Well, I did send a link to Breen, so he may be in here soon. And hey, maybe we have another person who's going to be joining here soon. So let me get that. Now I'm suddenly doing a lot of links. So anyway, one more moment here. We'll get everything going. How do you join the stream? I think I'm now getting a bunch of people in here. But Badre, let's get you out. Do me a favor. Just shoot me a mail. Let me know when it would be good for you, and that would be perfect. We will get you scheduled, and it is super fun. So, all right. I think Jimmy is on his way as well. So, okay, we're good. We're moving on to stuff. Ryan is a great guy. Absolutely. He is funny, and the Supergirl is going to be super, super hilarious. Anyway, covers weren't terrible. Stories could be. Yeah, Marvel had more nuance back then. Absolutely. They absolutely did. All right, but now we got Eric here. Hey, Breen, how you doing? Oh, no, and he's gone. All right, well, 12-person stream. We will get this all together. Drunk Lives Matter. That's right. At any rate, I don't have a page for it as we're waiting for people to come in, because I made this earlier in the day, and of course we got the breaking news. And I saw this picture of the margarita will be fine, that we are getting a J.J. Abrams and Ta-Nehisi Coates Superman reboot. So this may be a hot take, I don't know, for this audience, but I'm more concerned about the J.J. Abrams bit. I'll be honest. Abrams, somebody who writes, I mean, they're not going to let one person write the whole thing. It's going to be a committee effort. It's when you're talking about that kind of money, it's more unlikely that they're going to let it go off the rails. I completely understand. You can kind of put the pieces together. So just take for a moment all your emotions out of it, whether you like it or you hate it. Why would they want Ta-Nehisi Coates? Well, he is credited with building out this kind of very unique world and environment that was in Black Panther. Here comes Breen. How you doing, Breen?
A little technical difficulties, but can you hear me all right?
I can hear you great.
Great.
Thanks for joining in a last minute. I think Jimmy is on the way as well, so we'll have a fun time together. We were just talking about Coates, Man of Steel. How do you feel? First, there's a bunch of pieces here. First of all, you know what we're talking about, the Superman movie news?
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah. So first off, forget about the people involved. What do you think about them rebooting Superman?
Well, I keep wanting to see a reboot that gives me what I want, and what I've always wanted is something close to the Byrne version, or
Mhm.
at this, I guess, keeping it a little bit more modern, maybe closer to the Tomasi and Jurgens Superman. But it looks like that's what we're getting on the CW right now.
Yeah, it does. Yeah,
As far as the movie, I'll be honest, I don't really trust either of those two to
sure.
do the version that I would like to see, and maybe I'll just maybe for my own good, I'll let it go at that.
Well, I think as we're hearing a lot of commentary, what I was saying right as you joined in is for true or not true, people in the industry and Disney and others credit Coates for creating this Wakanda that was very different, very unique, a lot of depth to it, kind of a whole different mythology. Here's Jimmy, and we'll get back. Jimmy, hello.
What is going on, man?
Hey, I'm glad you made it early. I was killing time, but glad you're here.
I can hang on for about an hour.
Perfect. We're just going to have a good time. This is a nice casual Friday stream. We're getting everything together. It's a new computer. Eric is here. Jimmy's here. It's a good conversation.
You
It's
said
gonna be a
new
long
computer.
hour.
Yeah.
I got a new headset, so
Oh,
I'm
nice.
trying it out. How do I sound?
You sound great. You sound better than me. Both of you.
Ooh.
Just turn that
Yeah.
camera on, big boy. Let's see how you look.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, fair enough. So what do you think? So we were talking right as you joined in, and we won't recap it fully, but we got this new Superman movie. Again, I think a lot of people are concerned about the Coates involvement, but they've signaled that Warner Media, and I get why, really wants to do this very immersive Krypton. They want to spend some time there. They want to create a whole world there. And Coates is believed to have helped create that world for Wakanda, Black Panther. That was one of the things that was noted about it, that it created a very different, very immersive world, something that made it stand out, unique. It made a ton of money. So I get it. I get why they make the connection there. But what do you think?
So Coates on Superman writing the movie, right?
Yep.
Is that okay? Well, the closest thing Marvel has to the character traits of Superman is Captain America. And Ta-Nehisi Coates, however you pronounce his name, has written a fair amount of Captain America over the past, I think it was since 2008. And if anything is like that,
Yeah.
I don't have high hopes for it, but J.J. Abrams will make it look beautiful.
So that's so I was saying before you joined, that's more my concern, to be honest. Abrams, I don't love his work. I mean, he does make things look pretty, but I don't love his films. So to me, I think Coates, I think whatever people worry about with Coates, it gets sanded off in a lot of the Hollywood production process. But Abrams, like I'm not ready to see Superman with a bunch of lens flares.
Okay, you know what? I'm lagging in and out. I can hardly hear you guys. I'm gonna leave and come back.
Okay, all right. Well, Breen,
Sorry.
so no problem. We'll get you in here, Eric. How do you so shifting to Abrams? How do you like? Do you like his work, or what do you think about him?
I'll be honest. I didn't mind the Star Trek movies. I mean,
Yeah.
I thought those, like I said, they were beautifully shot, and so I kind of agree with Jimmy that it's going to look good.
Yeah.
But now you said something that you weren't ready to see Superman through a bunch of lens flares. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, I have no idea what that means, but I'm going to assume that
Abrams was credited with a lot of those, overusing it as a style.
Okay.
Yeah. It's I don't know. This is a weird mix. All in all, I think, I'm curious. I'm morbidly curious to see how it goes. I guess my main problem, kind of like I started about it, is like I don't really want them to reboot it again. Like I don't know about you, but I will vomit if we have to go through another Superman origin story.
Yeah, they would do well to kind of assume that we already know the origin, unless this is going to be a new origin.
Yeah.
In which case, here we go again.
Yeah.
You know what? The Superman and Lois TV show that just came out,
it's great.
Did a great introduction of Superman. They basically said, we already know everyone knows the origin of Superman. Here's like 10 seconds, and then here's the story.
Yeah, I that's a better way to do it. I think you don't need all this time. Even Spider-Man did it differently with the newest version. I just there's some of these that are just, we've seen it over and over and over, and I don't want them to do it again. I don't want to see this weird new shoehorned Kryptonian mythology. I don't want Game of Thrones Krypton. I just how hard can it be?
Yeah, and also I don't know, man, because also the introduction of Superman isn't that big a deal in my like, if I'm going to see a Superman movie and it's a total reboot, and a reboot for this new DC actually might be good since we're all over the place. And if we're going to go sit down and go, this is the new standard for our movies, might as well start off with Superman because he is the greatest superhero of all time. That's a fact. So, and having it be like an origin slightly wouldn't even mind me, because it wouldn't even bother me that much, because it's just like, I'm going to see a Superman movie. A lot of who he is based off of his origin.
Yeah, for sure.
So I wouldn't mind it that much, as long as it's not like half the movie, or in this case, Man of Steel, like what was it, like 45 minutes?
Yeah. I just we've all seen it. I mean, they should just lean on what we've got. I don't know. There's some other comments in the, what if they use Bendis's Rogel's, I hate that character.
Rogelzar.
No, please put Brainiac in first. Bree, what you've read Superman. You've read lots of Superman, I'm assuming.
Yes, I have.
What's the storyline you would adapt?
Gosh, I wouldn't mind seeing a live action Doomsday.
Yeah. Okay.
Or there's,
we already got that, but it was not good.
They'd never do it, but there was a storyline that Eglantine and I just covered in a video, where Lex Luthor gets a visit from Mr. Mxyzptlk, or however you pronounce that, and he cuts a deal with him. He says, I will make you Superman's equal, but the one rule is you can't tell him I was involved. And so basically he gives him a kryptonite rock that doesn't give Luthor Superman's powers. It takes Superman's powers away, and how he deals with getting him back. And it was a really, really fun story. Now, of course, they worked a Fantastic Four appearance into the story, so they wouldn't be able to do that. But something like that, I wouldn't mind seeing. Yeah, so either one of those would be cool.
The best Superman story, in my opinion, written is it was for the trade. It was a 3-trade story by J. Michael Straczynski, and it's Superman Earth 1. And that one, by far, even though it's a different universe, exemplifies who Superman is more than anyone has written it. I mean, Byrne had his Man of Steel was actually really good too. And what he did was he kind of really grounded Superman into, who do I want to be as a hero? And there's a point where this totally characterizes Superman, and this is one of the reasons why I love it. Is there's this woman he ends up getting in a relationship with. This is a spoiler alert if anyone needs to read it, because I don't want to spoil it to anyone who wants to read it, because it is a fantastic book.
It's been a while. I think you're safe. Okay.
But I was like, it's a fantastic book. So he falls in love with this woman who is a prostitute. And I'm not even sure fall in love, but they get into a relationship. And there's like a moment where he finds out who she is. And it's like, it doesn't even matter, because she had to do it to pay rent and like other things. And he's basically just like, that's not who you are. That doesn't define you. What defines you is everything else, really. Yeah. And it was just like, if Superman falls in love, if you can convince me that Superman falls in love with someone who's not Lois Lane or Lana, but ends up falling in love with a prostitute and makes me like it, you got my money.
It's who's not Barda, right?
Hey, Jimmy, did you see Mr. Jackpot's comment?
Jackpot?
Yeah.
Yeah. You weren't going to go grounded, huh?
Oh, you can believe a man can walk. You know what? That was actually a good story, too.
Well, if they lose their effects budget, they can always do that one.
Did I lose you guys?
No, you're here. I may be popping in and out. I don't know. It's possible. I'm the man who's got the problem, but anyway, we'll figure this out, right?
Yeah. Sorry.
All right. It's always new equipment. You're going to have troubles. Who knows? We'll figure this out. It'll be awkward. How about so I wanted to throw this up. I don't know how much of these you've remembered, but we talk about things dying and the death of the comic industry and everything else. I went back and I'm looking at other moments, and I was reminded this. Somebody sent me the 95 magazine here. We've had several of these moments here over the last several years. Do you remember any of these kind of headlines, these moments? I don't know, Eric, you lived through some of these, right?
I was there for the implosion.
Yeah.
I was there for, knock it off, Jimmy. I was there for the bankruptcy. So yeah, I've seen both of these.
You were there for the Depression. You were there for the Civil War.
No. You think this comic scene in 95, and of course this was right before Marvel declared bankruptcy. I mean, we had a magazine, the news magazine, with our comics dying kind of right there on the headline.
I wasn't really there for that, but I remember hearing stories like I like to listen to interviews, and when Neil Gaiman's Sandman ended, he talked about it, and he said people were like saying they weren't going to buy independent comics anymore and stuff like that. And then he goes, well, he's not one, especially from me. Neil Gaiman's my favorite author of all time, not a comic book writer, but my favorite author. And there's one thing he does better than almost anyone is he ends it when it's time to end it.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's done, like with Sandman there, oh man, he ended it.
Yeah. It's I do like the Two Faces of Tommy Lee Jones bit, just to remind us of that terrible movie as well, back in there. But do you think that's just inherent to comics that we're just going to say it's dying every few years? And that's just how comics is going to be, and it's how it's been for now, like 30 plus years.
Well, I think in 1978 with the implosion, there was one company getting maybe a little bit overly ambitious, and you couple that with a monster blizzard that cut off the supply chain and really disrupted things. And then by the time they got the numbers back, because in those days you didn't really know overnight, so that had a lot to do with the DC implosion. The one in the mid 90s, I remember we were coming off of the biggest speculator craze probably in the history of hobbies. I mean, yeah, probably even more so than sports cards. So it was only natural that when that bubble burst, you were going to take that to its most absurd conclusion and think, oh, well, the whole industry's dying, when in reality it was more of a course correction. And then you did have Marvel going through, I think they leveraged themselves into oblivion, and I think that had more to do with their bankruptcy than the comics themselves. And now with social media, we're in a 24/7, 52, 365 news cycle. Everybody's got to throw their 2 cents in, kind of like I'm doing right now. And so you're going to get your share of people that are going to say the sky is falling no matter what. Now, how much validity there is to that, comics may not be selling like they were in past years, but if you look at it in terms of the numbers they've been doing for, say, the last 10 or 15, it probably is a little premature to throw dirt into the grave.
If you think about it too, like from an outside perspective, You said it was a course correction. For me, an outside perspective, that sounds so true because you didn't have everybody buying 5 to 10 copies of every book on a stand. You had everyone buying the amount of copies they were going to read or just collect and just call it good there. So, of course, they're going to take a huge dive.
Yeah. I'm going to show some graphs in a moment. It's interesting to see kind of how it all plays out. I do think that in terms of having a shop during the time where Marvel was filing for bankruptcy and some of the things that were happening in the late 90s, it felt a lot more perilous than it does today, just anecdotally. There's content out there that is painful to read. I went through one earlier this week that Mr. heard, but it felt a lot more dodgy, like things were going to all collapse if you were hanging around in '97 than it does today.
That's interesting. Because I've been going to the same LCS for 40 years now, and I never really got that sense of doom. I don't get it now, and I'm actually working at that one now.
Yeah.
But then I didn't really get that sense that, I mean, they weren't obviously doing the numbers they were doing in the early 90s, but then I believe the late 90s was when the Pogs craze hit. Do you remember those?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
If I've got the timeline right, that it got to where they were basically Pogs kept that place going. So maybe that's why I didn't notice it as much because, I was still able to walk in, get my big pile of pulp, and walk out. So I might not have noticed it as much. But I mean, I guess you said you had a shop at that time. So were the numbers really cut that bad?
Well, it was the speed at which things collapsed, and it was the speculators kind of vanishing out of the market. It was just a lot of things happened very, very quickly. What we're going through now feels a lot more protracted, and so it feels like there's more opportunities to kind of course correct and adjust. And it felt like in the late 90s, you had, and Marvel was doing their thing with Heroes World, and there's just a lot of clumsy nonsense all over everywhere, and you had comics that were extremely late and coming in, and it felt a lot more off the rails than it does today. But it's just interesting to kind of see all this. It just stuff continues to clog along one way or another. Speaking of stuff clogging along, though, so next week I'm curious what of this stuff you guys are interested in. Next week brings us Berserker. I know what it says, but the big Keanu Reeves comic, crowdfunded, ruined the industry, cheated, took money away from hardworking Kickstarters everywhere. That's coming out. What do you guys think? What's on this list that you're excited about?
Let me get a little closer look.
Yeah, sorry, it's I bump up the text, but man, when you publish 100 comics a week, there's just no.
I'd be a lot more excited if my eyes weren't 58 and I could see these.
Well, I'm a big Avatar fan. That's my favorite. It's tied with Chronicles of Riddick, like that trilogy, for being like my favorite sci-fi fantasy movie of all time. So I'm going to be reading Avatar for sure.
Yep.
Berserk, I would like to read, but I thought it was only for Kickstarter.
No. This is the whole controversy. A Boom is publishing it, and because they were publishing it, a lot of people pissed off because they used Kickstarter, even though they planned to publish it anyway.
Isn't that the best of both worlds for the industry?
Yeah. Yes. Yes, it absolutely is.
Oh, we can't have that. It's current here.
Those bastards.
Okay. So they're publishing it. Okay. So when you said they were also doing Kickstarter, I thought they were just asking people to give them money so they could fund it for them to make it, not also sell it on there. Oh, okay. That's not bad.
That's what some people claim. I mean, we'll get to it in a second, but there's another comic you're going to see on the next page that did the same thing, sort of. But yeah, it's just, I mean, to me, I think this is a lot of silliness. Get comics exposed to more places equals good for everybody. So, I guess let me ask you, either Eric or Jimmy or both of you, and certainly people in the chat. Do you think that if let's say you're, I mean, would you? I just can't wrap my head around the complaint. You're not going to go on Kickstarter or Indiegogo going, well, I only have money for one book here, and I guess I'm going to go with Berserk. Because Keanu Reeves' book is out here, I'm not going to fund anything else. Do you think, that's not how people behave, is it?
People are very petty. I think you underestimate how petty
Yes,
people can be. So some people, yes. Most people probably not. They'll fund whatever they want. I mean, that's just who we are.
Okay. Now, the majority of the people that were doing the most complaining about this,
somewhat low.
There was not a huge crossover audience,
right?
Yeah. I'm sorry if you're getting Berserker, you're probably not getting some of those anthologies that Richard covered so eloquently in a few of his videos. So it's a false argument. I mean, if you produce work that people want, people will find a way to get it.
Yeah, I can't agree more. No, I mean, I know, like, so for example, Joe Glass has a new Kickstarter out right now. It's about half funded, right? So it's running out of time. I don't think the crossover audience for Joe's work and Berserker, I don't think there is a crossover. I have trouble in my mind thinking somebody's going, well, I don't know, Keanu Reeves or Joe Glass. I guess I got to go with Keanu Reeves. I mean, I have trouble seeing that as likely.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. Seems very.
I don't know either, because there's very few things on Kickstarter that really grab my eye that I would be willing to fund. So and I'm also very picky on the books that I read anyways. And Kickstarter, man, like there's a lot of, it's a real hit or miss no matter what you buy. And with this Berserker, at least you know it's coming from Boom Studios, Keanu Reeves attached to it, and the art from the cover looks impeccable. So you have a higher chance with that. But when it's just from Joe Blow,
Joe Glass.
No, I'm saying Joe Blow. No, I'm just saying Joe. I don't want to offend anyone.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, well, you do it anyway through that. But no, I'm with you. I get your point. And I also get Lane's point here of, like, there are companies that have used crowdfunding, basically hiding the fact that they have support from a publisher. And that seems kind of dodgy. If you're basically already have a plan and then you market it a completely different way and kind of get people to assume, hey, you need to come in here and pay $25 for this because it's the only way you're going to get it. And then, as soon as the campaign closes, it's like, well, it's also available $3.99 over here. I mean, that would be douchey.
Yeah, but there are perks to getting crowdfunding. And that seems to be almost like a point of pride for some people, is to be able to say, yeah, I got it with all the bells and whistles.
Absolutely.
And you guys are just getting the bare bones comic version. So I'm sure there might be a couple people are saying, man, I could have saved $20, but but that's probably not that many.
Well, also on the other side too, if you do it on Kickstarter, you have a higher chance of getting that than you do at the comic shop, and you didn't know it was going to the comic shop. And also, it could have just sold out on the stands anyways, and you could be like, wait, it came out on publishing? Oh, I missed it. Now I have to go on eBay, try to pick one up in good condition. So if you do it on Kickstarter and you know it's there, you're most likely going to get it.
Yeah. Yeah, you are locking in you're locking something in. I think that's also fair game. It just feels like this is another outlet for comics, and people need to wrap their head around the fact that it's part of the normal chain of how comics get out, and there's nothing wrong with that. We need to expand that chain.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised that it's coming as quickly, because I remember the one crowdfunded book that I ended up getting at LCS was, I think, Tim Lim's Trump Space Force. But I know there was a decent amount of time between the campaign and when it actually got into stores.
Yeah.
It kind of felt more like a movie coming to DirecTV Cinema.
Yeah. I think there's a whole experience that you get with funding something. As you mentioned, both of you, you're getting a different product. You're getting more to it. You're getting stuff included there that makes it more of a premiere and event. I think I don't know. I don't see that I'm with Ganon here. This is all nonsense drama. And if you're putting that money out, Beckstar by Mad Cave Studios, that's what you got to go with. Beckstar. Call your local shop. Again, big congratulations to Joe Corallo, who's writing that book, and get reserve Beckstar. Come on, freak your comic shop out by telling you want a bunch of Mad Cave stuff that they may not be ordering right now, and let's see if we can confuse everyone by ordering this book.
There is a Kickstarter that did catch my eye, and it was also just because I'm a big fan of the creator, who happens to be a friend. So, Ninja Blast by our boy Jay.
Okay, excellent.
And so I was like, oh wait, he's doing a book. I don't know, but then I saw the art and I was like, this art should be everywhere. Like, it looked painted and everything. It was like a good deal too. And I'm not just shouting him out, but like that caught my eye because it looked good. It got a cover on it that was like better than most comic books on the stand. And if you can do that, you'll catch someone's eye as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a great place to get some visibility. Kind of to the other topic real quick, then we'll switch over and get the other piece on. Do you think the industry crashes? It'll come back. So first off, I don't think the industry actually does crash. I do think there will be times when it will be better, certainly than today, and I think it will sink again. And I'll show a chart here in a minute. But do you think? Do either of you think the industry is actually going to fully crash?
No.
I'm going to say big two, possibly not in the near future, but I will say possibly because all things come to an end no matter what. So I think, yes, eventually, and not probably, I don't know, maybe in our life when we're about 80, Breen.
I'll be dead by then.
Yeah, you guys, Breen will be gone. And
Breen will be fine.
Perch might be living.
No, alcohol poisoning will have taken me out.
I love you, Breen. But I think, possibly the big two could, but comics themselves will always find a way to get out there into people's hands. So no and yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. How about, so page 2, this is the other book that was crowdfunded and of course has the image. This is Scott Snyder, Noctera from Image. What about stuff on here? Anything on here catching your interest?
All right, I'm looking real quick. I do want to read Noctera though, because Scott Snyder, great guy, great writer, and also Tony Daniel. Oh my God, yes.
Sure.
Let's see. I'm reading Star Wars: The High Republic, and so far I'm liking it.
Okay.
That it actually is not bad. And dude, Firepower. Okay. People who aren't reading Firepower need to get on that wagon.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
That book is so good.
That is a good book. Yeah.
Oh my God.
And you got Shit Show number 2. So.
And what?
No, nothing. No, go ahead.
Oh, Shit Show. Walking Dead Deluxe. This is my first time reading Walking Dead. So I've been enjoying the deluxe quite a bit.
All right. Very nice. Getting that second, it's selling well for being just, again, putting it back out there, but in color. It's selling quite well.
Walking Dead will always sell, dude.
Yeah. How about you, Breen? Do you anything on here you're grabbing?
Again, I said I can't see the fine print, but the Snyder book that you showed, that kind of looks interesting because I think my favorite Scott Snyder stuff probably is American Vampire.
Okay.
I think he's I think when he gets too involved in superhero universes, he tends to get a little bit too grandiose for my taste. Eventually, the New 52 Batman notwithstanding, the first half of that. But I think this looks like something that would be closer to American Vampire than Dark Knight's Metal. So I will definitely check this out.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, that's Star Wars: The High Republic Adventures for IDW. I haven't read that book yet.
Review Rick and Morty. Do you mean the comic or do you mean you're not telling me you iron? Do you mean the comic or the show? I like Rick and Morty. I understand for some reason that's bad, but I enjoy it. I show it to my daughter when the mom's not around because The mom does not like me showing the daughter Rick and Morty for obvious reasons.
I was gonna get into it, but then I have morals, and like
no. Shade. I've got morals, sir.
No, I mean like I used to like the writer Dan Harmon. He actually, when I was first writing, his Dan Harmon his writing wheel taught me how to write story structures, and then I saw a video of him saying some pretty gross things about children, and then I was like, "Oh, nope, not going to associate myself with that."
That's fair. Yeah, I have no morals. That's true. No. It's that's fair. I think there's a certain charm I hope the world can get back to, where we know a lot less about the people who are doing our entertainment, because that's only been disappointment in a lot of cases.
Yeah. It was really not. Comics were fantastic when we didn't know the creators' names.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's funny.
We didn't know their personalities.
We didn't know their personalities.
Yeah.
Like Eric, you've heard the stories of John Byrne's kind of antics in the late 80s and 90s. I mean, if that was happening today, he would be. I mean, what would be the reaction?
Wow. Before or after he got canceled.
Well,
now I've seen it. Guy that just got in the chat, friend of mine, Jerry Smith. I've seen him stand in line at shows to get Byrne's autograph, and he was never the most pleasant guy in the world. Let's just put it that way.
He's a dick. Yeah, I mean,
but he was a different kind. I mean, he was an equal opportunity dick.
That's true. Yeah,
he hated everybody. It's like, why do I have to do this? Why isn't it not enough that I make my comics, you guys buy them, you tell me I'm great in the letter columns, and yes, that far back they were letter columns, and let it go at that. I think it was almost like it was. I don't think doing shows and things like that were ever something he wanted to do, and boy, he would let you know it.
Yeah, he did not look happy there.
He'd sign your stuff, but he would do it. Like here you go, get next.
I think when we did the Death of Superman retrospective with Joe, and he'll remember this, he's in the chat. Joe always is awesome because he'll send me some videos that go along to kind of include into the retro or whatever we're doing. And he mentioned this, and then I thought, it can't be as bad as what Joe's saying. But he had found a clip of Byrne being interviewed about the Death of Superman. It's like, well, I killed Death of Superman already, and I brought him back in one issue. So there. I mean, it was just the funniest, smarmiest thing you've ever seen.
Can we just take a time to say, I love Joe Corallo.
Yeah, Joe's awesome. Yeah, absolutely.
I love Joe. But also, going on this, I don't want to hate too much, but I love his art.
Yeah, he's great.
Neil Adams' art is fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely.
But my friend was at a con, and a kid, like another kid story, a kid brought up his art, and he's a kid. His art's not that good, to show Neil Adams, and Neil Adams just destroyed the art, and the kid just kept crying. And one of the people sitting next to him had to like reel back Neil just to get him to stop talking so the kid can just stop crying. And I was like, why would you do that to a kid? Come on.
Oh yeah. No, Neil Adams, I've met and interacted with Neil Adams many times. In fact, I think one of the videos that has me in it is with Neil out there. If anyone wants to go scoping it, but he's an ass. I mean, he is not a pleasant, he can be a very unpleasant person. Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, Shanghala, I was going to say that, but I wanted to try to leave politics out of this stream as much as possible.
Oh, that's okay.
But that is a great point about Byrne.
Yeah.
It didn't matter, Republican, Democrat, black, white, gay, straight. He hated you.
Yeah.
If you were in line and he had to sign something, he hated you.
It's funny. It's funny how much he hates everybody. It is, but anyway, it's all kind of funny. I will say I have to always thank Joe. Joe does so many things, and he's always fun on the show. And definitely, I appreciate you, Joe. I feel bad for Joe because we did this Linearverse video earlier this week, and man, a lot of people did not get it. I mean, not just the concept, but they did not get that we were reacting to a real thing. And I felt bad at the amount of people who came in to try and explain to Joe how James Bond worked. And it's like, we know. We did.
that was, I got to say, that was some of the best entertainment I've gotten off of YouTube in a while. Joe, whether it was organic or a bit, Joe, that was an Emmy-worthy performance.
It was. I mean, probably a little of both is by and you know, in some of the making of this, I mean, we had the cameras on, so I got to see Joe's face while we were doing this, and it was a brain melting concept. But I went in, I let my wife hear it afterward, and we just had a good time, and she's not as plugged into this, but like right toward the end, we're talking about the time machine and Batman. You see Joe get really, it's like it's finally cracking him down, and it's just
someone's got to send me that video because I need to hear that.
Oh, you got it. It's hysterical. And then it was the next day of all the people coming in, be like, "This is a stupid bit, guy. This is your worst." I got so many mail. This is your worst fake pitches thing ever. This is a dumb. What you've lost it. You know, please somebody explain to Joe that they're not all the same James Bond. It was the funniest stuff.
But by the way, Perch, if I may make a request, my memory's terrible, so I don't know I don't think I've ever been on a stream with them, but sometime please have me and Joe on. I would love to talk, because I know he's younger, but man, I'm always impressed by how much he knows historically.
Yeah, I know he's amazing. So
and am I the only one who thinks he sounds like Adam Carolla? That
comes up a lot. I'll let him he's in the chat so he can tell us that. But
that's a good synonym.
Yeah. It's good stuff. Anyway, we Joe, I owe him a lot. He's a great guy. Over to DC Marvel Vault. We do get Infinite Frontier 0 with more. So we get now this is the first week of the new DC. Crime Syndicate's there. Batman has returned. Handful of other things. Suicide Squad #1, Swamp Thing #1. We also get the long-awaited America Chavez #1. Best title coming back, where they're going to redo her origin.
One major problem.
There's no Gabby Rivera. It's never gonna work.
Jimmy, that's National Treasure, Gabby Rivera.
Oh, my bad. Yeah. I am really excited to see what Bendis does with Justice League, because when I've talked about this before, when he's on team books, like New Avengers, Defenders, I liked Young Justice. They worked. They did really good, and I'm excited to see what he's going to do with this. I know I get a lot of hate for saying I like Bendis, but
Bendis you're about to get some.
Bendis is my comic book god. So I'm always going to read the first book of anything he does.
And you will be reading a lot.
You know what? Funny enough, my friend Skipintosh, he sent me a couple pictures of the original first print floppies of his torso book, and I said, "Hell yeah, I'll buy it." And then he sent them to me. Oh dear God, this is the most word balloons I have ever seen in my entire life. And I was reading some of his newer stuff, and I was like, "This isn't that bad." And then he sends me this, and I was like, "Oh, this is what they mean." There was so much. Okay.
They love you, Jimmy. Hey, what I love it. What do you guys prefer, by the way? Here's a question: pre-crisis DC, post-crisis DC. What's your favorite?
Jimmy, why don't you go first? Because I'll get long-winded.
Post-crisis.
Okay, easy enough.
Hey, that's all I got.
Green, what do you got?
Personally, the first 5 or 6 years post-crisis to me are the best comics of my 45 years of reading.
Nice.
I wouldn't say for you, that's your opinion. For my opinion, DC. Okay, here's something. If you ever want to read a book that's it's like an old one. Oh, give me a second. Sorry.
Yep, no worries. Yeah, imagine if Jimmy had said pre-crisis, it would have thrown everybody.
Yeah. No, again, I'm not saying that they were the best per se, but because for me that would be probably the first 10 to 15 years of Marvel. But
Mhm.
those first 6 years, because I'd been reading comics for 10 years of DC. Basically, it's not only not adhering to continuity. If they needed to create a new universe for a story, they just throw one in. Nothing really fit together, and it just the Crisis, and then the first handful of years after that, there were very few missteps, and it was just a great time to be a comic reader.
I'm back. Okay.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to read a damn good book and know nothing about previous or prior, previous or post, just pick up any Superman book from like 95 to 2005. And that's some of the best time in DC ever. Like you had Kurt Busiek on Superman. You had Dan Jurgens. Oh God, Dan Jurgens has written so much of Superman.
There's some good stuff in there, yeah.
Yeah, so good. But for me, the best time in all of comics is what I call like the Marvel Knights Bendis era of Marvel.
Okay.
From like that 98 to 2010 was some of the best comic books ever. And I still find some floppies from like that old time. I'm dating you guys. But it is, I have so much fun, especially with Bendis on New Avengers. That's like my favorite run on any book ever.
You're back to Bendis. I don't know what's going on here. I think he was definitely, it hadn't become a cliche for him. So Jimmy's drinking my booze here, I think is pre-crisis, post-crisis. I think pre-crisis comprises a ton of books. So for me, there's a lot of pre-crisis stuff I absolutely love, but you're talking about a massive amount of time and a massive amount of books. And I do agree that first 5 years there was a lot of good stuff in there. It's enough time has passed now, and there's been enough crises that it's hard for me to even reconcile at this point which was where. But I feel like they did have it down decently after Crisis. There were some really good stories in there.
Well, let me ask you a question, because I have a huge affinity for pre-crisis DC myself, whether it's the really simple stories, the superhero stories of the 50s, the second half of the 50s, 60s, and a lot of stuff they did right before the implosion. I thought DC had a lot of really fun stuff coming out, and there were some really, really good, like the Englehart Rogers Detective. I thought Black Lightning was a tremendous series, but they kind of, it has more of like a nostalgia feel to it. And it's just like you can just take them for what they are, as like self-contained little entities. But the post-crisis just seemed like there was paying attention to continuity really for the first time in their history, and I just thought the stories themselves were so much better and just as fun.
Yeah, I hear that perspective. I think. I don't know. It's interesting that there's been some time that's passed, and it is I don't know. There's just a lot of good comics back then. I think Joe and I are preparing to do City of Crime. Obviously, that's post-crisis soon, in Batman. But there's so many great runs to go back in, and I'm excited to get into all those. But
yeah, if I can just say something real quick about Joe's comment there.
Yeah,
pre-crisis Batman. If anybody hasn't read the 5 years or so prior to the crisis, when Doug Mensch and Jerry Conway were writing Batman Detective, that might be the best stretch of it. It's up there with the best stretch of Batman ever, because it was the two books did cross over. They had storylines that would last for years at a time, and it was really, really good.
And they didn't get old? Like they didn't feel old after a few years?
No, as the new linear timeline has shown us, nobody gets old.
Yeah.
Oh, I meant old, like feeling of the story, like, oh, the story is just getting old.
You got to go listen to the Linearverse video. We'll explain it all.
Yeah, let Joe explain it.
Yeah, Joe will explain it to you. It'll be good.
I'm excited for that Swamp Thing by Ram V. Like Swamp Thing is
me too. That's gonna be
one
great.
of my favorite characters in all of comics, especially like Alan Moore. His Swamp Thing is my Swamp Thing, dude. Alan Moore does no wrong in my book. but Ram V did something special on that Swamp Thing.
Yeah. Oh no, I think I'm really looking forward to that. I am hoping that they do extend it beyond. There's be some talk. I thought it was just dumb solicits, but at least there is some talk that this may extend beyond the limited series, and I hope so. So anyway, a couple good things. But you might have been wondering, by the way, if you were looking at these issues, like, hey, something is missing. We've been going through the issues. Yes, don't worry, Dynamite. We haven't forgotten about you. You are still putting out pervy covers next week, and so don't worry.
Get that? Like, there's
they're
need.
Still there. they're still there. Dynamite has you covered with butt. It is no problem. Actually, there's less butt next week, but anyway.
I don't get that. There's no.
Yeah.
I mean, if it sells, they're gonna keep doing it, but I don't. From an outside perspective, I don't see. There's no point in doing that.
Yeah, no, it sells, but I mean, I always kind of wonder, like just go porn. I mean, what are you doing? Why are you taking this half step to Dynamite covers?
I want to see that giant '90s troll in Vampirella have a kid. That's what I want to see.
There you go.
Not really, Jesus.
Dynamite lets you never change. Lets you never. Yeah, exactly. Asses. There you go. Good to see you, Jeff. Dynamite. I. What are you gonna do?
I do like the tribute cover with Vampirella punching whatever that is she's hitting. So yeah, I think that's an homage to a Spider-Man punching the Hulk cover.
Yep, that's exactly it.
That kind of looks like a Rob Liefeld, 90s Rob Liefeld, Jack Kirby's Demon.
That's Todd McFarlane. That's definitely, I mean, even down to the little kind of the way the signature is, that is, somebody will remember the actual issue there. But yeah, she looks like she's happy. He's getting punched right in the junk. So not great, anyway. Yeah. Anyway, anyway, well, if you're spending money on this stuff, good times. Yeah, there you go. So we talked about it briefly earlier. So the battle of crowdfunding. You guys have any predictions for which one's going to do better? Image versus Boom.
Oh, Berserk, without a doubt.
Yeah. Okay.
Keanu Reeves is attached to it, and people, I don't get it, but people die over Keanu Reeves.
Inside the comic shop, do you think that's still going to play out though that way? I mean, on online with crowdfunding, it definitely went that direction. But when you're actually selling this in the shop, what do you think that changes? Yeah,
Berserk, because there's more buzz around that comic than Noctera. And Noctera hasn't been like all over social media as much as Berserk. Noctera just kind of brushed Twitter as of like this last week.
Yeah, that's true. It has been much quieter. I don't know, Eric, what do you think? Which one beats? And people in the chat, what are you, first of all, are you getting both, one, the other? Who do you think wins in this battle? And it's pretty crazy that this is the same. I mean, they're both landing on the exact same week. It is a head-to-head fight between the two.
Yeah, I was going to say that it would be relatively close inside the shops, but then Jimmy brought up a good point. Berserker's going to bring people into the stores that don't necessarily frequent comic book shops just to check out that curiosity because they are Keanu Reeves fans. So I got to say Berserker will win that fairly easily.
Although it's kind of a shame because Tony Daniel doesn't get as much love as he should.
Well, that's true. Yeah, Tony Daniel versus Ron Garney here. I'm not starting a fight. Both I think people have gone out of their way to say that they're not in it for a fight. But it's fun to see these isn't it kind of fun to see these rivalries? If it does kind of, I think comics needs a little bit more of this.
Well, it's nice to have something that's going to bring people into the shop. Now, it'd be even nicer if some of those people don't have tunnel vision to Berserker and look around and go, hey, wait a second. If Keanu Reeves made a comic book, maybe some of this other stuff be worth checking out.
But the thing too, I will agree with you to a point because competition is always good for sales, but rivalries aren't.
Okay.
Because then you cut out half of the audience because then you got people changing sides rather than both of them checking them out and going, oh, this one's my favorite.
Yeah. I think we had some, I mean, in the 80s, there was a rivalry. It was friendly between Marvel and DC. There's been different eras where there's been this kind of rivalry. And it seems like maybe I'm using the words wrong, and I take your point, Jimmy. But I mean, I think that some competition where it's head on, but it doesn't become a dumpster fire is healthy.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah, it's it's interesting. Yeah, pre-orders for Berserker. That word, the lack of vowels, is going to drive me insane. But triple that of Nocturna thinks Noctera will be better. So there you go. A lot of good comments. It's going to be interesting. Now here's the next. I mean, Berserker is a finite series. Noctera, does anybody know? Is it a limited series? How far that's going to go?
I have no idea, but someone in the comments earlier said they got their hardcover and it's massive. So I'm guessing it's more than 6 issues. Yeah. I have a feeling it's probably going to be around 12 or 8, around there.
Okay. Yeah, very good. It's interesting to see. Of course, this is Snyder stepping out of DC, but Snyder does have a story in the Infinite Frontier book. Yeah, but a lot of stuff to watch. It'll be interesting to see those two going on. Yeah, Larry Hama versus Simon Bisley, an actual sword fight would have been amazing. Yeah, for sure. I think that more competition is healthy. I think it does breed excellence, as Jeff Soren said earlier, and I think it's healthy for that to go on. I think you can have it without it spilling into a big mess, and more of that's not a bad thing. So there you go. Anyway, lots of comments in here. All right, so I want to show this very quickly. I've got a couple charts here, and it kind of leads into, if you're coming in here late, I mentioned that I got a giant dump of data from the newsstand from the 60s through the 90s, and it fills in a huge missing gap. So I'm very excited to dig through it. At some point, I'll have to make hours of time to go through it all and kind of bring it out. But here's some charts. I just grabbed these off the web to kind of give you a high-level perspective. I can't completely validate some of these things, but they're there's some math behind it. People have put it together. Here's a look at the 50s through 87. The interesting picture here is just at the point where Marvel and DC crossed, and then DC never really came back into the picture. Does this? I mean, I don't know. I'm going to Breen. Breen was definitely not collecting comics in 1950. But what do you think? Does this picture surprise you?
Yeah, he could have been. I don't know.
Yeah, one of these days.
One of these days.
No, it doesn't, because I remember in the 50s, at some point, DC or Marvel, or Atlas or Time, whatever they were called in the 50s, got in so much financial trouble that they basically had to fire everybody but Stan and I guess Joe Maneely. Mm-hmm. And so DC. They brought the superheroes back, so I could see where that would lead to a good size lead. And I'm a little surprised. The thing that surprised me was that Marvel, according to this graph, got them in 1967. I was always told it took into the early 70s for Marvel to finally overtake DC for good.
I did too. And I'm putting these up as stuff that's circulating around the internet. We see them. I want to dig into these numbers because they don't seem quite right. And the next one seems even weirder, and I'll show it to you in a second. But I also, I do not believe in the 70s. Like, they show Marvel basically took it and never let it go. And I don't agree. This is not quite right. I don't know if this is what it's factoring in. Yeah, see, here's Shanghala is saying similar. It doesn't look quite right, but these are numbers people put out. The other part is I don't know. There's just some things about this that seems
yeah, because around the 70s, if I'm correct, Breen, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Jack Kirby go over there?
Yeah, but by that time, Marvel was a rising juggernaut, and it was inevitable, with or without Jack, that Marvel was going to overtake him. And what Shanghala said tracks with what I'm saying, because that 25-cent backstab he's referring to was for Marvel's 10th anniversary, the cover date of November 71. They let it be known that they were going to raise their prices to $0.25, and then DC heard about that and they followed suit, when in reality Marvel had only planned to do it for the anniversary month, and they dropped it back down to 20.
Right.
And DC was stuck with months worth of 52 pages. Don't take less. Well, people took less.
Yeah. Yeah, that was an
Also,
interesting moment.
I thought at the around Crisis, I thought they started selling just a bit more for that year.
It was definitely closer, and it maps to this. I put this up on Twitter as well of this timeline again, and this one it seems a little bit more valid, but it doesn't quite track. And the graphic I'm going to show you right after this, and we'll get out of kind of nerdy numbers territory, but you see these moments, and if you're keeping track of the two, it doesn't quite line up the same way. Like the line doesn't quite go, and also. The fall, this idea of the slump between the late 80s and kind of 91 also, I don't think tracks quite right, but, and please ignore what the things that are labeled at the top, the death of the Marvel universe. It's just some fun there. I like, by the way, I have a video coming out at some point, and Joe and I have talked about this many times before. I think Breen, we may have talked about that on one of Wes's streams, is this obsession over last dated event of just why in the world people continue to get to track what chronological time's happening in the comics. Like why in the world, which leads us to the linearverse, by the way.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's an interesting picture.
This is a really cool picture though, because I'm looking at it like going, well, that seems about right. Because Jim Shooter, when he came, sales really did skyrocket.
Yeah, but this bump is tiny. If you kind of look at the dates, it's not quite right. I think
that's also something about like the telephone effect too, because everyone talks about it when Jim Shooter took over. Like, oh, everything was good, stories were good, it was selling like crazy. But then when you look at the numbers, it was just above average, like a little bit.
Yeah, I would have to think that given the great historic runs that happened under Shooter in the first half of the 80s was probably what kind of pushed DC towards revamping their universe. I would think that the Marvel's lead would have had to have been pretty decent sized.
And I also don't think, I mean, Shooter did put a lot of things in place. There's a lot of things going right for them. It was more than like a 4-year bump that this is kind of representing. But anyway, by the way, because a couple of people have asked right now, I mentioned before, I do have the super chat donation option thingy. I just don't use it because I want you to go spend your money on comics. I'm good. So I'm not too rich for super chats. I want you to go buy comics. There's other people who put out great content. Support them. I'm okay. This is just fun for me. So
What a guy.
I don't want to pay the taxes. I mean, anyway. Okay, so here's one more picture here, and then we'll get out of graph territory. This one is interesting because this one actually does track a lot closer to the numbers I have, and I can validate that there's some validity to this. So remember how the last graphic showed Marvel just going to hell, basically there in the 90s. It stops kind of conveniently with things kind of turning around. And certainly Marvel did increase there quite a bit, especially, and I think a lot on the credit of the Ultimate Universe helped them out significantly. To your point, Jimmy, Bendis definitely has some pieces here. Civil War has some pieces in here. So there's a bunch of things, but DC also, the New 52 was very strong for them. The bump before New 52.
Also Joe Quesada, because when he took over as I think it was COO, I'm sorry, CCO, Chief Creative Officer, he really made sure things were set in line. And then the universe came, the Ultimate Universe came, which was, what was that, 2005?
Yeah.
So yeah, we still had a good, I want to say 7 years. He came around 97, I believe. So 7 years. So that tracks.
Yeah, it's an interesting picture. Now, this picture also doesn't show that after 2015 things went back down again. But anyway, it's an interesting way to look at it. Image, you see a growth largely on the back of The Walking Dead, quite bluntly. DC, you have Blackest Night, and you have New 52. Anyway, there's some interesting pieces here as well of how the business operates. So I'm pulling all these together with some bigger pictures. I'm excited to show them to you. Hopefully, you guys will put up with my nerdy goofiness of all this stuff, and it'll be fun. So,
no, I like this. This is good stuff.
All good. All right. Speaking of which, what does just want to talk about? Infinite Frontier. So, are either of you in for this? Are you buying it? Are you excited? We kind of talked about it a little bit earlier. Jimmy, you're in for Bendis, but Infinite Frontier. I think we have a writer for one of the stories for Infinite Frontier in the chat right now. So we got to,
Hello.
I think Jeff has a story in there. I'm pretty sure. So here's
Jeff who?
Jeff Thorne.
Jeff Thorne. What's up, dude?
Yep, absolutely. So we'll show some of the pages here. 3 pages, he says. Okay. Well, good. 3 pages better than 0. So looking forward to that. What do you guys think? This comic, are you excited for a relaunch? Do you like the idea of an issue 0 with a bunch of different people in there all trying to kick off their stories? What do you think? Yes, Yara Fleur is there. So definitely Yara gang. Absolutely. What do you guys, what do you think?
As long as it's not Convergence.
Not Convergence, definitely. It feels like an anthology kicking off kind of point.
I will probably pick this up. I was out of DC when Rebirth did this about 6 years ago. I have since gone back and bought that and read it and really liked it. And I'm curious to see how this measures up to that.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, I'm really not sure how much DC I'm going to be consuming. I'm really waiting to hear of maybe a Venditti JSA and, short of that. I just don't know.
Okay. I'm hoping this book is interesting because they've done these before, and I think they've been very successful, and they've failed in terms of kind of teeing up the next books. And I'm curious how this one reads. Obviously, what you're seeing on the screen right now is this kind of, it looks like a framing story with Wonder Woman. Looks pretty. I mean, there's some really solid art here. A lot of kind of deeper DC mythology.
Ivan Reis, dude.
Yeah, it's nice looking. No, this isn't Ivan Reis, is it?
Isn't the first 2 pages Ivan Reis?
Maybe.
And then the page on the right, that's John Tim.
Yeah, you may be right. I don't know. Here we go. No, I don't think that's Ivan Reis. Somebody smarter than me will go into it. But anyway, it looks pretty. It's got a lot of stuff on here. It's I'm curious how it all goes. Of course, we do get Superman here and kind of our lead in for Justice League and the infamous, we don't have the page here, but Shazadam, which is clearly just a nickname, I think, but they're not going to, actually, yeah, here's the page right here with the credits. And there is definitely the Jeffrey Thorne with Dexter Soy of kicking off Green Lanterns. We got a Jeff Johns story with Stargirl, Josh Williamson with Green Arrow and Black Canary. A lot here. I don't know.
I'm looking for the Ivan Reis because there's no way they did not get him on this.
Yeah, the John Timms is doing the framing story art, what we were seeing earlier. So there you have it.
I mean, I'm down for this. I'm down for this. I kind of want to see what they're gonna do. I'm gonna be picky on what books I'm gonna be buying anywhere, not just DC. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, there's only a few DC Infinite Frontier books I'm actually want to read. Like Justice League, Swamp Thing, Green Lantern, because Jeff Thorne, from what I hear, you're doing my boy John Stewart, so I gotta read that because he's been needing his own book for a while.
He definitely has, yeah.
And I don't know much else after that.
I'm curious to see Alex Malev, I think, on a Green Arrow Black Canary book feels like a good pairing, along with Josh Williamson. I'm curious to see that. I think Philip Kennedy Johnson, that House of L story was great. I really enjoyed that story. So I'm definitely more encouraged to see what a Superman's going to look like. I don't know. It's going to be curious to see what all happens here. But a lot of it, of course, is kind of where they, how well they kick things off. And this is where I think they've done it. They get a bunch of talent on here, but sometimes it leads well into other books and sometimes it doesn't. So it's, what's the hook? How's it going to go? I'm anxious to see it. Maybe if we're lucky, I can get, Jeff on to talk a little bit about his kickoff next week. That'd be cool, but we'll see. The last page is fire, he says. All right. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, I think most of my misgivings are, I'm at the point where I don't know how many more universes I can break in, because I said I am pushing 60. So, and I've been through a ton of reboots, relaunches, crises, et cetera, et cetera. And at some point, it's kind of like, I think at this one, I'm gonna have to wait for some of the reviews to come in, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair. I do think there's a challenge, and it kind of goes back to some of the things I've said. And I don't say it's to knock DC or frankly Marvel either. But when you relaunch a title or you reboot a universe or you have a crisis, you do all this kind of stuff. There's just been a lot of it. And I've got a graph in a video coming up showing kind of each time there's been a relaunch. And if you just look, you kind of scroll back a little bit and look at it in a 50-year time frame, it's all weighted to the last several years. And when you do that so much, it's just people get, it's kind of what you're saying here. People get exhausted, and they start just waiting to see how it's going to play out because they feel like they've been jerked into another relaunch over and over.
Yeah. And also, wait, is that Kevin Maguire on the art right there? That kind of looks like Kevin.
No, this is David Marquez.
David Marquez. Oh, I love David Marquez. I'm down for that either. God, yeah. Sorry, side tangent. Where has Kevin Maguire been? Because that guy needs to be on a lot of books.
No, I agree. I think he wants to. I think he does. I think he gets used for a page or two with Guardians, or with more recently, I think he was on the Legion of Superheroes. He did a page or two under Bendis. But like, get Maguire onto a book. He's a great talent. There's a lot of people out there who are great talents who are just not being used right now.
Yeah, and also like get some people like with names to get people to going. If they're on it, that means they probably like the story, and that gets people comfortable to hop on. And I feel like that should be a thing more often.
I do too. I want to get this, Chad, but Jimmy, you say you have to go, I think, right?
Yes, I do have to go.
No problem.
Sorry.
I appreciate you hanging with us for as much time as you did. Eric and I will carry on, and we're going to get back on again very quickly.
All right, guys. See you guys later. Bye.
See you, Jimmy.
All right, take it easy, Jimmy. So Jeff points out, and this is what DC is saying, that this isn't a reboot like a Crisis. It's kind of a soft relaunch, and I think this is where I suspect after 4 months, 6 months or so, that's how people will absorb it. That's how it's going to come across. It's just, I think the market has gotten into this place where there's been just so many reboots, so many relaunches, so many kind of changes in status quo, which, again, not just DC, Marvel does it constantly as well, that everybody is just becoming, again, I heard it in your voice, Eric, just everybody's becoming a little bit more tentative to jump in again.
Well, I've actually started working as I mentioned, at the LCS, where I've been shopping for 40 years, and I'm probably going to end up there, permanently. Mm-hmm. And one of the reasons why is there's no one there at this time that's really reading a lot of comics. Yeah. And that's something that they desperately need. They need somebody that can walk the walk, I think the saying is. Yeah. So I'm sure I will be reading a lot of these. As far as like how much I actually, bring into, well, I guess my collection, for lack of a better term. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but I said, so I'll definitely be checking these out, because there's always curiosity. Like I said, as long as I'm in the hobby, I kind of do want to know what's going on in it.
Oh, sure.
And for the last 8 or 9 years, DC has, in my opinion, produced far more worthy content than Marvel.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, I think, I don't know. I think that there's one thing about DC, and we'll see if it plays out. It feels like, and I don't know if it's intentional or not, just from this vantage point, the stories that they're launching feel a lot, I would say more different. It feels like there's a bigger variety of books that are coming out, which over the long haul should play in their favor if they've got some very tonally different books that people can hop onto. But in the short term, I think they've got to recalibrate their audience. They've got to get people who are, routed to the right places. And so I don't know. I could see there being a dip, certainly in sales, while they figure out kind of which person belongs in which. Because one of the interesting parts of Future State was there were very different opinions on what the best and worst books are, depending on the audience. And I haven't seen that kind of crazy spread in a long time. Were you seeing that in the shop too?
Not so much, because I wasn't there for a lot of it.
Fair enough.
But from spending a lot of time on YouTube, What I did notice about Future State was everybody went into it with low to no expectations, and it exceeded that. And again, that sounds like I'm damning with faint praise, but I think this turned out to be better than people were anticipating, which is good for DC. And I a lot of people said, "Oh, they're getting this bump based on the idea of somebody they fired."
Yeah.
But going forward, at least it generated enough excitement where I think there will be interest in Infinite Frontier. If Future State had gone south, I don't know how much interest there'd be, regardless of how different or how much better
That's
it may
true.
be,
Yeah.
and that will help.
Yeah, I that's true. I do. I'm curious to see how it plays out. It definitely feels a little bit more unpredictable at this current moment, and but it's going to be interesting to see how this all fits. But we got a bunch of people in chat wanting to go back to Dynamite covers, so we'll move on to. I don't have more butts right away. Yeah, see, here we go. Mumbles, who is my biggest critic, by the way. I never change, man. You're fun. Here are the different conventions coming up over the next 3 months. It's interesting. They're slowly coming back. We're slowly getting. Now we got Jeff asking for butts. What are we doing here? Any of the well, obviously, what I asked the question last week, Eric, would you go to a convention right now?
In a heartbeat.
Excellent. Okay. What do you think the experience is going to be like? Is it going to be? Somebody brought this up to me this week. It's like, hey, you're saying you're knocking kind of, will people go to conventions? What's it going to be like in those crowds? How's it going to be juggled? What kind of crazy protocols are going to be in place? But to be fair, if suddenly everybody at the convention had to wear a mask and it reduced some of the smells, that might be a plus.
Yeah, I'm sure that's. I'm sorry, I was trying to be the straight guy, but yeah, that's something that maybe comic conventions should have implemented 30, 40 years ago. But as far as I don't know if you can jump right back in with like the star-studded lineup that brings the people that just go to the shows to meet people that were in shows that they watch, stuff like that. If you did a convention the old-fashioned way with a bunch of dealers selling a bunch of comics and things like that, I think it would probably be more doable. Unfortunately, I don't know in 2021 if you can sell a convention just on that. As far as I don't, and also unfortunately, I think there are a good number of people that I'm not sure are ever going to feel safe in crowds again, no matter how many vaccines they get, no matter how many people finally tell them it's okay to go out into the world again. So I'm not sure how these are going to work. But as far as myself, I said I've had the big C, and I'm fine. I'm not. I mean, I respect it. I don't fear it. So I would take my chances.
Yeah, I think it is. I agree with you. I think it's going to be a tough haul. I think people are going to be very slow in getting back to it. I guess you said something interesting. I do think that we're potentially looking at some. So maybe a return to some of the vendors showing up with comics and kind of that feel to it, and that would be nice. Honestly, I think if there's a bit of a reset with some of these cons where we're going to put a little bit more into the comics and the back issues and that kind of feel to it, maybe they're a little smaller. That would be nice. I would love to see that. A reduction in celebrity signings and other things. I miss those kinds of cons, and it's very hard to find them anymore.
Yeah, those honestly, I can't remember the last time. You probably have to go back to the late 80s and early 90s, the last time that when I worked at a hotel, there was a convention center.
Yeah.
And the guy who owned the shop that I'm now working for would put on a couple shows a year. And it was just, there were no stars. It was just, you rent a hall, you bring the dealers in, you sell the comics, and that's all that it was. And those were my favorite kind of shows. I mean, I think I've
I would love to see that.
One celebrity in my life at one of those. It was the guy that was on Lost in Space, Major West. He was also a cool soap opera villain who had a poison ring. He shook somebody's hand and killed him.
There you go.
And I went up to him and said, "You really should have shaken hands with Vicky, who was the main character." And he proceeded to, the next words out of his mouth was, "She was a see you next Tuesday." And then he just went off.
Wow.
That's neither here nor there to this stream.
But I have had some wonderful experience. I mean, the big cons, I met some very good people. I got to hang with the and now I'm forgetting his name, so I'm sounding like a complete dummy. But the main actor from Napoleon Dynamite, spent some time drinking with him. That was fun. I've had some really good times with these people, but I would like to see the return to the small regional crowds. It'd be good. As LK says, definitely there's interest. I think there are people who want to go to things, but I think a lot of the companies are going to be really reluctant. Like DC and Marvel are going to be really reluctant to send people and sponsor these things. They won't. I mean, the last thing any of these big companies want is that they sponsor some booth and have a bunch of people there at the con, and then there is some outbreak that gets tracked back to that con, and then it's liability. I mean, nobody's going to touch that. But there's definitely interest from vendors and from retailers and from just people who want to go. And so maybe that means we get some smaller cons. That would be great.
Well, and also with each month that passes, more people have either had the virus or been vaccinated for it.
We are coming to
and I think I said some of the crowds that have been allowed to go to games and whatnot, some of the data has come back, said there's been no uptick in cases as a result. So I think we're definitely on the back end of it.
Yeah.
So that'll help. And I said we might still be a year or two away from what we remember. Because they might continue to do those kind of shows. Might continue to do a combination of maybe smaller in venue with virtual con to go with it. But I said, that means that's never meant anything to me because I just like to go buy back issues at these things.
Exactly. No, I think it's the numbers are trending right. We should be happy. I think people should feel good that things are getting better and better, and we are getting back to normal, and that's a good thing. It should be politicized or anything else. It's good, but it is going to be a while. As Jeff says, if it's exactly it. If one person gets sick and a company sent them to there, or if they sponsored it, or they just nobody like Marvel does not want to have the news report saying, "Oh, there's a big Comic-Con and there was a super spreader event," and then in the background of the footage is a giant Marvel logo over a booth. Like they're not going to do it. Everybody's going to want somebody else to take that risk. But the online cons, by the way, they should not suck as much as they do. They do suck. Please, this is where I really just beg the comic industry, find some people who can pull this off, like who are not in the comic industry, who are used to digital shows and like do something. But I mean, it's some of these they're so terrible. And it's always pains me when I see creators who are in these things that I know, personally, I met Jerry Duggan. I met a lot of the X Office, and that X Office panel was painful to watch. Not because of the people involved, but just the whole hosting of it was just like, oh God, it was so painful. Anyway, and then I'll shut up. I don't cosplay when I go to cons. But at some point, my daughter really wants to dress up like Hit Girl and go, which is weird because she hasn't seen that movie. I won't let her watch it. So, what are you going to do? But
do you let her reenact the at the breakfast table birthday scene?
No, she hasn't seen it. She hasn't seen the movie.
I mean, you could have taught it to her.
I could have. When I was very young, and I've thought from time to time about when she was very young. Sorry, I've thought from time to time of sharing this, but I think people wouldn't catch the humor. When she was very young, and she didn't necessarily know what she was saying, I would take famous kind of movie clips and then have her say it in her 1.5, 2-year-old voice, and I would just tape a couple words at a time, walking her through it. And then I have this clip from kind of famous monologues in movies. And I did the always be closing rant from Glengarry and Ross. And it is hilarious, but it is definitely, not for children. Anyway, so there you go. Hey, here's some stuff we can get into, some cover. Now, can you see these, Eric?
Yeah, can you give me 1 minute before we get started on these?
Absolutely.
You entertain the troops. Thanks. I'll be right back.
I will do that. Yes, but I've never dressed up in these things. Furries were creepy, for sure. There you go. Connections. I always sound like such a douche when I say some of these things. Anyway, yeah, bragging about people I know. I don't know these people. They're just there. Well, so for those of you, well, we'll do a little bit. Eric can kind of come into that. That cover in the top corner there is a Marvel cover, Savage Tales. This was something. This was a Marvel magazine they were publishing. I had forgotten completely about this. Does anybody else remember this thing? Wait, who am I talking to? Of course, Eric has left. I'm just talking to myself. Good times. It's been a long week. What am I saying? Anyway, this we've got a handful of covers here. We got Marvel, DC. We have a bunch of things to pick through. Somebody asked earlier. Yeah, there you go. Thanks, Mumbles. Very, very appreciated. What about the Nubia Real One? To kind of wade into that, obviously I did the video earlier this week. I didn't care for the story. I thought, for the reasons I said in the video, the thing that has held on for me, and it's kind of a problem with YA in general. YA, I think YA is confused, and it's not just that book. It's a lot of books. You can't. People thought I got a lot of people challenging me in the comments. You can't put a book that has a school shooting in as a YA book that's going to get sold into schools. That's just not going to work. Eric's like, what did I just walk back into? I think, some people say, well, would you feel comfortable selling The Punisher? I mean, sure, but they don't sell The Punisher in schools either. So what are we talking about? I think there's a miss there in a lot of cases. But anyway, so I don't know. Eric, did you read Nubia Real One?
No.
Okay, fair enough. There we go. It's interesting to watch how that goes. It is, but I found the story pretty reprehensible. But other people, if you like it, cool. I just think that you can't make a YA book that drops the F-bomb throughout the book and then also has a school shooting and then go, this is great for the kids, put it in schools. It's just like that is not going to happen. So anyway, I don't know what to say, but on to some other covers. What do you think, Eric? Do you remember the Savage Tales book and what the hell was going on there?
That one I don't remember. I'm familiar with the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, the Fantastic Four. And that was from the Byrne run. I think that was I think some kind of story set in the past, because I think the Thing was out of the book at the time.
Yeah, I believe
they brought him back for that story. The Power Man, I can't see the number of that. Is that where he's fighting Mace?
Yes. And what's funny about that, and it's tiny, I know if you're seeing this on the screen, hopefully you're able to blow it up bigger, but I like how they're just fighting on the subway, and there's some people there in the background like, crap, Luke Cage is just getting hammered by this guy with a mace for his hand. I mean,
he was he was an ex-military guy, and I can't remember what his I can't quite remember what his motivation was, but did you ever read the old Luke Cage Power Man series?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
When I first started collecting, that was one of the first books I found, and I said a couple weeks ago the first Epic collection was released,
and
which is great because I can't afford another issue number one. But it was I love those stories, and it's and I thought it was a great series. Unfortunately, it didn't sell well, so they put them together with Iron Fist. And I thought that was, whoever thought of that, should have gotten free drinks for the rest of their lives, because that series was a blast too. Now the Iron Man, that's one of the best stories of one of the best runs, the Denny O'Neil run, where they really dove into Tony's alcoholism. And oh my God, that was such a good story. And it gave us, I said, Jim Rhodes as Iron Man, Tony struggles with alcoholism. It just in that particular story where he had to deliver Greta's baby.
Yeah.
And if anybody's read that, it's a very, very touching story. And like I said, that's my favorite Iron Man run ever.
Yeah, it was. This was great. This was the first of the 50 times that they dealt with his alcoholism. So,
well, actually, it's the second because they touched on it, Demon in a Bottle, but they didn't really have the courage of their convictions, I guess, for lack of a better term, because they built up to its, kind of tiptoed up to it, and then all of a sudden, like 2 issues later, he's a raging drunk, and they wrapped it up faster than a CBS procedural.
Yeah.
And but this one really, really, played it out.
It's a powerful week here. I mean, you got Spider-Woman there, which was Marvel doing what, wasn't cosplay, but you have that Daredevil was a pretty solid. This is in the middle of a pretty solid arc for Daredevil. Machine Man's a car.
Yeah, the Spider-Woman, that was Marvel was doing that in that year or so window. There was a photo cover for Spider-Man where it just had an actor, with holding the mask and looking off into the, like a profile pic.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a Marvel team up with Spider-Man and Captain America. There was also a photo cover, which was something DC did several times.
Yep.
About a decade or so earlier.
It's good. Shanghai, thank you for this little bit of data. I didn't know this. So that was actually Marvel Secretary Lynn Luckman. You're saying the
oh wow, I didn't know that.
That is a cool bit of that's some cool bit of history. And then this New Mutants title as well was one that kind of really started to cement what would be a really powerful run there. I mean, it's issue number 4, but this was a lot of good stuff. I've got to go dig up Savage Tales. I remember seeing this. I have no idea what was going on in that comic. So I'll have to do a full review of that. That I can't wait on. So that looks so strange for Marvel, but zoom in on Savage Tales. Okay. I can't do that. Okay, over to DC land. A lot of Satanism this week for old DC. They were all in on that. This is going back a little further. I do like that super dejected Superboy. Like, go to hell, Superboy. I just poor Superboy walking away. And this was Aquaman's absolutely terrible costume.
Yeah. So, now, I know these are not all the same week.
No. Well, it's the same week, different years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now, my favorite one up there is Showcase 100. Do you remember what they did in that issue?
I don't.
They used every character who had ever been featured as like this showcase featuring.
Oh, cool.
Which means there was no Superman or no Batman, but pretty much everybody else. And they found a way to weave them all into one, like 48 or 64 page story. I don't remember how many it was, but it was, so you had Lois Lane, but no Superman. And it was typical DC fare for 1978, I believe it was, but it was a fun story.
Nice.
Yeah. See, I remember the Batman. I remember having that, and the Justice League, although I said I can't really speak in specifics. And what number was the Black Lightning?
This is Tony Isabella. This is number 9.
Okay, because if I'm not mistaken, the first story arc, the Tobias Whale story arc, was 8 issues, and like I said, you'd be hard pressed to find a better introductory story to a character. And then I think editorial started interfering with him, and I think there was the case where they told him they were going to use Black Lightning and Super Friends, and they changed it to Black Vulcan, and I think he kind of checked out because the 9, 10, and 11 weren't nearly as good as the first 8. I mean, they weren't bad, but it's almost like he got the wind knocked out of his sails, it felt like.
Yeah. And
then his book got imploded too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of these are pre, of course, the semi collapse, but some good. again, I always feel like in this kind of case, there's a bunch of stories, a bunch of comics in here that have stories. You could collect them up. You could put kind of some cleaner dress around them. You could do not just an omnibus, but I feel like you could very easily take a bunch of these comics, package them together, and resell them, and it would be like brand new stuff for a lot of people here. This Flash, if people are asking, is issue number 285. So I don't know. There's just there's a lot of history that they just kind of blow off, and a lot of these comics, I think there's a secondary market for getting these out there.
Why DC doesn't have the equivalent of Marvel's Epic Collections is beyond me.
Yeah, I mean, both companies. Joe has mentioned this a lot. I think he's left us at this point, but in the chat. But it's baffling the kind of however they're planning these omnibuses and these releases. They let things go out of print for no apparent reason. There's a lot. I mean, you've got WandaVision out right now. In theory, this is the first kind of Marvel show coming off a really hot just overall franchise for a year, and a ton of work was just not reprinted, just out of print. And they knew the show was coming. Like there was all the times to get it ready. It is completely weird. I do not get it at all.
Now, you might know this better than me, but from what I've heard, a lot of why certain trades, omnibuses, masterworks and whatnot go out of print, that it comes down to storage space at Diamond back when they were the only distributor.
That's one of the things I've heard as well. I also think there's the fact of they have some very messy contracts in the past, and they don't know who to pay or what to pay, and weird decisions happen there. I've heard that there's a lot of kind of knowledge that goes out the door. I heard this horror story that I wish I could get somebody to confirm for me, that, when people were laid off at DC, there are people just kind of wiped their computers and left. And there were years of work and material and indexing and things that just nobody was storing anywhere. It was just gone. I mean, yeah, I don't know. That Diamond story is, I mean, likely from what they know, it's crazy to me.
It seemed like now it would be more like Amazon warehouse space.
Sure. I mean, this is one of those areas where you could just get somebody else. You don't have to house all this stuff. Just like there's lots of solutions to this problem. It seems like a very solvable problem. And it just, same thing with Marvel. I know, I can confirm for a fact that an assistant editor left Marvel and just took the computer with them. And like 3 months later, somebody thought to get it back and just walked out with some art, some digital stuff that wasn't stored anywhere, just done. Just crazy, just absolutely crazy to me. Anyway, that stuff always gets me really pissed off because it's a really easy problem to solve.
Michael Johnson Curry said DC has an Epic Collection equivalent called the
Essential
Collection.
Yes, that's true.
I thought that was Marvel.
No, they have the Essential Collection. Yeah, it's not as robust though as the Epic Collection. I don't think it's anywhere close to as much.
Maybe that's just what they title some of the books that I didn't know that's what they the name form that they had. Because I always reference like those Batman years I talk about, the 80 to 85.
Yep.
You can get some of the reprints, but they reprint them by creator. So if like they're doing a Gene Colan hardcover, if he skipped an issue, they skip that issue. So it's hard to get a complete run because it's broken up by if the writer or artist wasn't on one of the titles. So I'd like to see one just straight through.
Yeah, I no, absolutely. I think this gets to where I feel like I have a lot of issues with the comic publishers and the big two and other things, but they're not the same issues other people do. It's why I know I've run afoul for some people like, yeah, I'm really upset with these ideas, and they're not the same problems a lot of people talk about, but it kind of is. LK does a good job of summarizing. It's a multi-million, in some case, billion-dollar industry, if you think about it, with the licensing and other things they do. And at times it's run equivalent to the guy with that's running the think Kinko's or the FedEx down the street. It's just not run like a business where they're trying to maximize money. They're just way too much. Some of the contract stories I've heard are just nuts. So that stuff just always makes me insane. But
and Ash has a comment right below that that I've got a great example of what he's talking about.
Absolutely, this is true. Yeah,
there was the DC canceled the Justice League omnibus, like the third or fourth one that was going to have like 147 through 180 something, and then they printed the Wedding of Jean Loring where they put like 15 of the issues as a hardcover. My friend got that, and lo and behold, they uncanceled the omnibus, and he's already got $60 into the hardcover, which would have been halfway to the omnibus, which has twice as much. So it's like that's a great point. That nothing's more aggravating to a fan than pulling crap like that.
Yeah, I completely. You kill a lot of momentum for no good reason. It's these are avoidable problems. It makes me nuts. Shanghai is saying it. No Marvel Essentials. I could swear he's right though. The DC has
a showcase, presents those with the black and whites.
Yeah,
and I'm familiar with those. I have a bunch of those, but I was thinking more along the lines of the color reprints in the Epic collection.
No, I'm almost positive, and now I just can't do two things at the same time. But DC put through Essentials on some books as well. There was, but frankly, the fact that we're having this debate is exactly the problem. It's exactly the problem. This just put a brand, stick with a brand, put it out. It's not that hard. I mean, anyway, it's nuts. So I don't know. We have some debate in the chat. So Aquaman, what do you think? That costume, that irked the hell out of me. Did you like that Aquaman costume?
About as much as I like the Black Canary costume around the same time.
Okay.
That's a no.
There you go. Yeah. So all right. Well, let's flip back to Marvel here for a minute. How about this? Daredevil backhanding somebody with a billy club. There's a lot of actually violence on this. You got Captain America decking Magneto. You got the Thing having girl problems. It's like lots going on here.
That Daredevil, that's I think from the Born Again storyline, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. This is Frank Miller, 231.
Yeah, and I want to say that isn't he hitting himself?
Yeah, I think that's meant to be Matt Murdock.
I thought so. Let's see. Is that the Fantastic Four? Is that like 218 thereabouts?
This is 218 exactly. Yes, this is Byrne would come on not too long after this.
Yeah, and Byrne was doing the art at this time. He did a handful of other issues.
Oh yeah, that's right. He was
with I think Joe Sano is the inker. And I think this is where Spider-Man helps him fight the Frightful Four, no, Wizard dresses up like Spider-Man and tries to pass himself off as a member of the Frightful Four, and then hilarity ensues.
No, there's some fun. I got into a huge argument with somebody over the Squadron Supreme, who said that this was basically saying this is Marvel ripping off DC. They're talking about Squadron Supreme now, and just didn't believe that there was a previous series called Squadron. Now, Squadron Supreme was trying to, it was nodding to the DC universe and those characters, but it wasn't created last year by Jason Aaron.
If you remember the Avengers storyline right after the Beast joined, where they got involved with the Squadron Supreme from the other Earth. So that's 1975 into 1976. There were members of the Squadron Sinister going back several years before that. So and this miniseries is one of the most highly thought of miniseries ever. I mean, it's been a long time since I've read it. I need to read it again.
Yep. Yeah. And as we're saying in the chat, yes, that is Barry Windsor Smith there on New Mutants. I always love, and his work has held up. The last thing he was doing some covers like 3 or 4 years ago, but it's been a while. I know he's still he's still doing work, and I heard that he would love to do work if somebody would call him up. But I call him up, Sean. Get Barry Windsor Smith doing a tie-in to White Knight. Let's try that. Would love to see that.
I think I could shake the couch cushions for that.
Yeah, please get Barry Windsor Smith. Yes, he's not cheap for sure, but I mean, come on, just somebody get Barry Windsor Smith on a book. I love him so much. So I hope we can get him back on things very soon, because he is good stuff. Here is back over to DC work. We got the Teen Titans returning. There's actually a lot of stuff going on here. Here's that Green Lantern anniversary. We got the Outsiders. There's some really nice comics in here.
Yeah, I was a huge fan of the Outsiders from the first issue, when Batman wanted the Justice League to go to Markovia to rescue Lucius, and they turned him down. And so he said, when Superman says no member of the Justice League can get involved, and he goes, well, that's cool, I quit, and formed the Outsiders. And and then of course, since Batman doesn't play well with others, he eventually left his own book. And I thought the book was actually, didn't miss a beat without him. That Teen Titans series, I remember that, that was early in the second run that like Wolfman and Perez moved over to that one.
Yep. Yeah, there's some very good. This was it felt like during this era of Superman and Action Comics as well, people were worrying less about how hard Superman was to write. They were just putting out Superman comics, and it was fine.
Well, yeah, that was kind of the thing. I said I've been reading DC for 10 years. When the crisis hit, one of the things that about DC was you would buy Superman in Action, but you didn't really remember. In those 10 years, really the only time they tried to make it count was when they hired Marv Wolfman to write Action, got Gil Kane to do the art, and they did the storyline where he was split in two, and the two halves couldn't survive without the other. And I know the splitting Superman up has been done times after that with like the Red and Blue, but this one was Superman and Clark Kent, and it was very interesting. But then once that run ended, it was right back to just like I said, beginning, ending, and you could read them in any order. And I think that's one of the things. So like I said, Superman was the book that everybody said they got, but sales would have told a different story. And so I think that's one of the major reasons why they did that. Also, is their flagship character, who is now Batman, but then was Superman, or at least 1A and 1B. It's just nobody talked about Superman. I mean, he was just truly a forgotten icon by then.
I know, absolutely. And
there were movies going on, and the book didn't. No one cared.
Did you read this Super Friends run? I mean, it was lighter, but this was, as somebody mentioned in the chat, it's a good retro read. That Super Friends stuff was fun.
I used to collect them. I read a few of them. And I said, the only time I ever encountered a celebrity at a convention other than the guy from Lost in Space was I was on the floor digging through boxes, and Harlan Ellison was standing over me going, "Are there any Super Friends in there?" Yeah. I said, no, unfortunately no. But I guess I always found kind of interesting that a renowned writer would be looking for Super Friends.
Yeah. So folks in the chat, yes, I absolutely am going to approach Sean to do a cover for the book. Absolutely, we'll do that. And yes, I will trade some Art Adams art that I've got here for it. Absolutely, whatever I have to, or I'll just pay for it. It's good. And I do appreciate Mumbles on chat. Yeah, blank pages as well. Yes, that's. I had this idea at one point. I think I mentioned it a while ago, of doing a crowdfunded book as just basically the crowdfunding title would be "You're Never Going to Get This Comic," and just see how many people would fund something. And I would say right there, nothing is actually going to ever ship to you. It will just be blank pages. I'm going to steal your money and just see if people will fund it anyway. Just
didn't Cecil already do that?
But didn't actually not ship anything.
I don't remember. I think he just called it a cash grab.
It feels like that would be something that they wouldn't let you actually pull off on that platform. But anyway, always good stuff. I would love to. I'm very sarcastic. I don't know. Probably not a good idea. Hey, how about this? Do you remember the Wasp when she decided to make a costume with one of the legs just missing?
Yeah, they actually debuted that in 161, issue 161, but it was a different color. So that wasn't the first time she'd gone to that. Remember, she was a fashion designer, so that might have been in fashion at some point.
That was always a very weird choice. I don't know that it just like I mean you can't think too much about practicality of comics, but just like I don't know, save the colorist some work on a leg. I mean,
because remember one time in Justice League year 1, I think it was, Barry Allen went up to Black Canary and said, "Is it practical fighting in high heels?" And she grabbed his mask and twisted it around his head and said, "Your point?"
Yeah.
So I said, as long as you don't put too much thought into those kind of things.
Exactly. I don't picture them sitting around and really spending a lot of effort to it. But the comic next to it, this X-Men comic, I mean, this of course is a very famous book. In terms of, I mean, it's probably, I guess it's the book right before this one that gives us that infamous Wolverine in the sewer looking out saying, now it's my turn.
Yep.
This was right in the heart of the Dark Phoenix run. Very, very, everybody knows this one. So
that's interesting. This block has 4 reprints.
Yeah. It's that's true. There's I shouldn't have lined them up that way. There are a lot of reprints in here. Eesh. And Rom hanging in there. Good old Rom.
Underrated series. They were, one thing Marvel was smart about was they must have known from the beginning that someday they would lose the rights to the character. So the Rom title itself had as many guest stars as the Dazzler run, but they were very careful to keep Rom out of other books. And the only time they used him was Hulk 297 and 2-in-199 because they can't reprint those. So that at least they didn't load them up in other titles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. What else we got? Wait a minute. I went too fast. Okay. Sorry. Back and forth. So this is a weird question. I was thinking about this when I was pulling this together. You remember? So Marvel did the official handbook of the Marvel Universe. DC did Who's Who. Mm-hmm. You remember both these things? Do you think one did it better than the other?
Not really. I mean, they both were what they both what they were supposed to do. Is because in those days you couldn't go online and read all the stuff about characters you wanted to read about. So, I mean, it was literally a comic book encyclopedia. Yeah, and I thought both companies did a very good job with it.
Yeah, I miss those. They've gone to the they'll do like they have the King in Black tie-in right now and everything else. But it feels like this would be a case where put something like this out again, have the characters there, put it out in the cheapest paper you can have and the cheapest cover price you can have, and just get this, get this stuff out there as an introduction to the universe. Yes, I know that the internet exists and everything else, but in terms of a digital product or even kind of some kind of marketing that could go to the shop, I think these comics would have a pretty good life.
And even more important, make the people that work for you read them so you have an idea.
Yes.
I mean, I'm not trying to be glib. I mean, there would be.
No, you're right.
You would have characters that were so much more powerful when writer A was doing them versus writer B. And it's because no one really. These books set parameters. They remember in the bios, they told you how many tons the characters could lift if they had super strength. Or, or they would say strength, normal human type thing. So you got an idea of what these characters could do. And a lot of writers lost track of that, down the road.
Oh, absolutely. Do you remember when, and I don't remember the name of it, it wasn't Who's Who. DC also came out with a format where it wasn't printed as a comic, but actually it was in binder sheets. They had the 3-hole punch and they sold it kind of plastic wrap that you could take it and you can actually put it in a binder. These characters. Do you remember this?
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I don't think I ever saw it.
Somebody will hopefully remember that in the chat. But I love those things. I took them out. I remember I had binders full of DC characters. That doesn't sound quite right, but it was awesome. I don't remember Marvel doing that. Mr. Jackpot saying both did it. I should remember that, but I definitely remember DC did it, and they were larger pages, and I loved them. I not everybody apparently they were done, but I love those because they were so helpful. And I think the printing quality was better at one point. They sold the binders. Sean Murphy remembers that. There you go. I think they wouldn't really work today, but I love
it. Didn't work for Mitt Romney.
Yeah, it did not work for Mitt Romney. That is absolutely true. No, by the way, I'm not 78, but these were cool. I think this was late 80s is when this was coming out. And I mean, again, I think both Marvel and DC, it would be a very cheap thing to put out. And I always cringe a little bit when Marvel does an event and they do the handbook to this event and they sell it for $3.99. It's like, no, this is what you should be giving away for free. That would be perfect.
Let me ask Sean a question. Did that come with a notebook that had DC characters on the actual notebook?
They sold the notebooks. They sold they sold the actual plastic binder as well.
Okay, because I've got one sitting on my shelf. I never knew what that was from. Now I do.
There you go. So yeah, there you go. So it's been placed. I put Yara in the binders. Excellent. Perfect. Yeah, I think I don't know. There's a million little things that I think could be done to just market and get some of this stuff out there that would be super cheap because it already exists. You own it. You have the art already. It'd be, I don't know. But onto these comics, Infinity Inc. This is some good stuff. We got a nice Wonder Woman in there. I do like Green Lantern getting fried by that lantern. So.
And do you know who the question mark is in Brave and the Bold 150?
It's Superman, if I remember, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Okay, this was, which issue was this? 150.
150.
Yeah. This was a good. That was a good series. I like the Blue Devil. I get that that's not one of DC's prime characters, but that was fun stuff.
Well, Blue Devil. If you're a younger reader, you have no idea that Blue Devil, how happy-go-lucky, and how this was one of those titles DC did in the early to mid 80s that felt like a Marvel comic. Yeah, that and Firestorm is a couple of examples because they it just had that feel. And I was a huge fan of the original run, not to take anything away from the character that evolved into the one used in Shadow Pact, but it's like the character is now a little bit more serious than I think the original creators had intended.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's a good run. Yeah, if you get anybody in the chat that gets a chance to check some of that out, fun stuff. And yeah, like I said, you mentioned Brave and the Bold.
Yeah,
what an awesome suit. Bob Haney just doesn't get enough credit.
Oh, totally.
The guy was completely out to lunch. But I'll tell you what, if you take a Bob Haney story as just its own entity, that man was creative as the day is long.
Yeah, I there's some amazing good work, and in talking with Richard Case or with Nancy Collins from before, and there's a couple others that have been, there's some interviews I've done that have been finished, and then I'm just waiting for some approval. There's so many people out there who are waiting, would love to do work. Maybe the big two consider them just too dated as a style, but guarantee they would sell. There's just, I keep hearing this story a long time. I think it was Sean who actually asked me when I interviewed him the very first time, where are some of these people, where do they wind up? And in a lot of cases, they're out there, they're ready to do comics. Would love to talk about them and do stories or drawing. And it's just like, somebody call them up. Let's do it.
I'm just not sure some of these, older creators, you fit the direction that the big two are seem to be heading in. It's
For sure.
because there's just, I don't know. Like I said, there's more of a just sense of all ages fun and adventure in older comics that I said, as much as I would like to see it again, I'm not sure that today's readers, the ones that are still consuming the monthly comics, that may not necessarily be their cup of tea. Now, if you could find a way to get some of these people to do some books, see if they can bring some of the people that have dropped by the wayside, yeah, I'd like to see that.
I think there is, I don't know, there's just so much. There's ways to do it. I just think you gotta be a little bit creative, but the interest is still there. And in a lot of cases, it's not like these people are wanting crazy money. They want less than what I've heard of a lot of people who are out working today. So anyway, all good stuff. Well, not really, but hey, here's Simonson Thor. I think this is Simon. Yeah, that's Simonson Thor.
What issue?
This is 367.
Yeah,
well, wait a minute.
Right around it. Well, he was still writing.
Yeah, this might have he may have been just writing at this point. I'm not sure.
Somewhere right in that area, Sal Buscema took over the art, but he did his best to mimic Simonson's art. It didn't you knew who he was trying to do, but Simonson's unique.
Yeah, you can tell when people. I mean, a lot of these artists, people try and copy the style, but it just doesn't. Same thing is always true when people try and copy Byrne or. I mean, a lot of the Jim Lee, the people were coming in to try and copy those styles. You could just tell.
Yeah, and a lot of times that's what they would do on these books if they would switch artists. Rich Buckler, who I know got a lot of flack for stealing other people's styles, but I think a lot of times that was asked of him. Yeah, you're doing Fantastic Four. Can you try to look like Kirby? He did some issues of the Avengers where he did a really good Neil Adams impression. So that's So it wasn't always the artist's fault if they were asked to do it.
Yeah, and in many cases they are. I think some artists have gotten knocked unfairly because they're told to draw in a certain style or try and do a certain thing, and that's what the editor, the publisher is asking them to do, and then they turn around and the fans crap all over them for drawing like a certain person. That's just it's a bit unfair. How about this Star Wars Vader playing with toys?
One of the things in all my years of reading, I've never been big on licensed properties. So I had the early issues of Star Wars, like a dumbass sold them for pennies. But I was not reading Star Wars at this time. But that's a neat idea on the cover. Yeah,
I do like this. Vader's also looking like he's been eaten. I mean, this is body positivity Vader. There, he's Vader's got some trouble, but he's playing with some toys. I don't know, this X Factor. This was kind of early on in that run. Some good stuff there. Last week I mentioned the X-Men Legends book. Booth is doing it with Nacenta right now. We have the Wheezy and Walt issues coming up. Are you looking forward to that? Are you reading those?
I did not pick up the first one. I kind of looked through it, and most of the characters used were not the ones that really jumped out at me to say, hey, you got to get this. There's still plenty at my shop, so I may change my mind on that. But some of these other things, I think when the Simonsons do one, I think I will check that out.
I'm looking. I love Brett Booth. I love what he does. But to see the Simonsons reunited on that book, I can't wait for that.
I looked through it. The art, Brett Booth art was fantastic, and it looked, like a book from back in the day.
Yeah, it did.
It's just that I said, I've been around so long that back in the day, for most people, I was already decades in.
What do you think? So this is an interesting question. My answer, just very quickly, would be Marvel. But what do you think of the two, Marvel or DC? Which publisher do you think pushed house style more?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, Marvel
also,
obviously is known for it more
yeah,
than DC, I think.
there's eras where DC was pushing it pretty hard though as well. It's an interesting question. I also think you have the art and the writing. You could split this question up as well, kind of two different ways. I think overall though, if we're looking at the grand scheme of things, I think it's Marvel. Marvel, there was definitely some some things they mandated. I don't know any of that is really happening now, but definitely kind of overall.
Yeah. Do you want to take Parallax's question? You're more analytical than I am. You could probably answer that better.
Oh, okay.
He's just at what's house style.
Okay. House style. Well, so it's basically where the publisher is dictating a certain way that the comic is going to be created. So whether it's kind of the process used for writing, whether it's the way that the art is going to be produced, kind of different. It's just in the style of either the writing, the art, in some cases the way the lettering is going to format. There's a lot of different aspects to it, but it's basically a style guide. It's a mandate or an editorial decision to say that our books are going to try and look in an aligned way. One argument, a simple way might be to think about this is, the trade dress on the comic. Marvel had that standard box there at the top, and the Marvel Comics room, every comic had the same trade dress. And even if an artist and John Byrne tried to buck it several times, would come in and say, I'm doing this cover and I want to modify that trade dress. No, house style was that it always had to be there in that position in this way. And so, that has exceeded to kind of how the comic gets written and other pieces. Hopefully that answers your question. More standards.
Yeah, Paul saying, Stan Lee told everybody to draw like Jack Kirby.
Yes.
And in his early days, other than Steve Ditko on Doctor Strange and Spider-Man, that was pretty much the case. They all kind of had that look. Of course, back in those days, Jack was drawing a good chunk of them.
Yeah, it was. It's interesting. There's some very different answers here. I think it really depends on the era. I think overall, over the grand scheme of things, I would say Marvel. But there were eras where DC was really insistent upon things, and there were times when Marvel was more experimental. So I don't know. My answer is Marvel overall, but I think you can make an argument both did.
That's fair.
Anyway, that's a good question. That's a whole video topic in and of itself. But Art Dilbert on his channel has talked a lot about kind of different styles and other things. This is a topic he hits quite a bit, which is interesting to talk about. Yeah, as Sean said, under Didio, DC's house style for a while was Jim Lee meets Silver Age. Yeah, no, that's true. I think you hear these things. I don't know. I'm going to now go to sleep thinking about this one. So thank you for providing a new obsession. All right, let's get off that fat Batman cover. How about we got a couple Legion, a bunch of Legion on this, actually. And there's an old JSA, part of All Star Comics.
Yeah, that series, it started off as what do they call the book? All Star Comics, and they had they brought in the new characters. They introduced Power Girl and Star Spangled Boy and the Earth 2 Robin, and then realized pretty early on they needed to add more of an emphasis on the Justice Society. So you notice that, look at what's way more prevalent on the cover.
Mm-hmm.
That was a good series. Yeah, if I'm sure you've read it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I think I've read most of these. I have big gaps in Warlord. I never enjoyed Warlord as a comic, but I should have, but it just, but most of these, I think I've read everything else here.
Now, the Flash Spectacular, that was a really fun story, bringing the three Flashes together. Mm-hmm. And DC did one of those with Superman and with Wonder Woman, and I was a huge fan of the Dollar Comics idea.
Oh yeah,
But that Flash one was probably the best story of the three.
Yeah. This is where the anniversary, or that's not the right word to say it. This concept of a comic, they were really clocking pretty good. There were a lot of good uses of this format back then. And again, I think several of these comics you could package up today and sell them. And I think I'll mention this to the chat as a question, because this is my own bias. I've certainly talked about, the people coming into the comic shop already have a bias as well that they're coming in with. So, but curious what you guys think. I think the industry worries a lot that people today picking up comics, new comics fans, will not be able to relate to this art. It will just look weird and archaic and antique, and they just won't go for it. And they can't. They don't even bother. And my experience, at least in the shop, is almost exactly the opposite. And I see more and more of it with kind of this lean into nostalgia and different things. I don't think there's this barrier to people taking this kind of art that the publishers think there is. So certainly to the chat, what are you guys thinking? What do you think, Eric? Do you think this is a barrier?
It shouldn't be. I think a lot of it maybe the artists whose the vast majority of their career was confined to newsprint.
Sure.
And it might not look as crisp and as clean as some of the artists today that may not be as good as those guys were, but it looks better because of the advancements in printing technology. Like that Superboy cover, Superboy and the Legion. You recognize the artist on that cover, don't you?
Oh yeah.
So last I checked, modern fans still like him.
all these. I mean, I don't know. I think. Certainly kids are not, or new readers are not going to relate to these comics if they're coming with a, $80 price tag because they're back issues. But I mean, if you were to take some of these books and put them in a digest format and get them out there cheap, I think people are going to adapt to them just like the new stuff. I don't think it matters.
I would love to see DC do like something like the Essentials or the Showcase, only color, do them on newsprint, and reprint a bunch of those dollar comics.
Yeah.
I've got to think there's still somewhat of a market for that.
Yeah. I totally agree. I think it's and definitely it's work you already have. It's in hand. It's paid for. Maybe there's a royalty or license you have to pay. Maybe not in a lot of cases, but it's cheap. It's easy to do. And nostalgia is selling really well in almost every other, venue. I don't know why not the obvious of just repackaging this stuff, get it out there. It's money sitting on the table, but, you could remaster the coloring, as Jamie says. You could do a lot of. I mean, you should experiment. I think there's a lot of different options here. But anyway, some good comics on this page. How about, we're almost coming to the end here. I've kept this for a long time, Eric. I don't know how you're doing, but
I'm fine.
How about we got Star Wars Attacked by Rabbits here? That's always great. This was rumored to be the original plot of Last Jedi, but they took the rabbits out. Bumblebee getting just mixed right there by the Decepticons. I like what they're doing with that Spectacular Spider-Man cover, how they work the logo into the building. I always used to love when the artist would do that. I mean, imagine it took quite a bit of work, but I always loved those covers.
There are a lot of those Spectacular Spider-Mans in that era that did that, because I guess that was the experimental title of the two. Never sold as well as Spider-Man, so I guess maybe they figured they could take chances. Although I would, argue that for a handful of years, Spectacular was actually even better. The Silver Surfer. Do you remember that story?
I know I've read this. I don't remember. This was issue 50.
No, it's actually a one shot.
Oh no, you're right.
That I believe Stan Lee wrote. John Byrne did the art, and it's the issue where Silver Surfer finally is able to escape Earth from Galactus' punishment.
I didn't know this was the cover to that book.
Yeah, it was one of the first books I bought when I found the comic shop I'm still going to, and I thought, hey, this is cool.
Yeah, that's a great story. It's one of the That's one of the best Silver Surfer stories in there. Very nice. Way to go, Sean. That's um, it is. This is Howard the Duck. There's Doctor Doom. I'm completely excited that this is John Byrne kind of tearing it up on Alpha Flight. He wasn't on Alpha Flight much longer than this, though, was he? This was issue 10, and I think he left not too long after.
27, I think, was his.
Oh, okay. So I
issue.
got quite a bit, actually. Yeah, it's some good stuff here. Absolutely. Spider-Man Satana. Anyway.
Yeah, Team Up was just kind of there at that time. I mean, they really weren't doing a whole lot of memorable stories, at least not to me.
Yeah, no, it had a dry period for a while, but it's still pretty cool seeing some of these characters get some highlights that they weren't getting elsewhere.
Really, after the Byrne Claremont run, it's how do you top that? And then I think it just became a lot of inventory stories, and whoever's got time to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think there was, I'm not sure if I remember correctly, but there wasn't a steady team on the book for a long time after that.
Right. No, there wasn't. It's all right. Well, hey, I got back to the end. I don't know. A lot of good memories. I like putting up those old covers. I know it's hopefully everybody enjoys that. It always feels like kind of a stroll through memory lane in a lot of cases. I'm going to change this up a little bit by still doing the covers, but I'm going to grab some interiors as well to kind of throw up from some of these books, because that's awesome to see as well. I'll try and take some of the covers and then show some of the interior shots, because there's some great stuff to remember. And again, I just hope more people get introduced to some of these old books. They're out there and they're great. I don't know, Eric. We'll probably we're wrapping up, but I don't know. What are you reading these days?
Not a whole lot of the news. So I'm reading a couple of the AWA Upshot books. Wes talked me into trying Erratic.
Oh, that's great. Yeah,
and I'm really liking that. Man's World. And I don't know if this is Upshot also, but Jason Starr's new book, Casual Fling.
Okay, yeah.
I checked that out. As far as Marvel, I'm actually reading 2, which is a lot for me these days. Spider-Man and Daredevil.
Okay.
And are you familiar with the Warrant magazine's Creeps and Vampirus Carmilla? I think it is. They're kind of homages to Creepy, Eerie, and Vampirella. And so. There's actually some of the people that worked on those that are still around, contribute to this, and it's a black and white magazine size, and that's always a lot of fun. But not, other than that, mostly, back issues and collections. I'm on a huge 80s indie kick now, so I'm reading through Nexus, John Sable, Badger.
Oh, nice. A lot of the Eclipse books.
And when I can get my hands on them, I just picked up 13 of the 14 issues of a series called New Wave.
Okay, yeah.
And Lee Weeks was the artist, all the way back in 1986.
Very nice. A lot of those, I don't know, there's probably money in it for somebody to go through and just kind of do a profit sharing kind of model and find a lot of these indies and throw it. Again, you'd have to do it on digital in a lot of cases, which I know would drive several people in the chat up the wall, but it would just be nice to see some of this stuff out there in a way that's not the free comic scan site, just to get some of these in there.
Mike Grell is crowdfunding, I believe, a Sable omnibus.
Oh, but yeah, that's right.
Get it back out there. So that might be a problem. I said, we were fortunate enough to have Mike Barron on with us a couple weeks ago on our Monday show.
Yeah,
I should have asked him if that would be something that he would have to do himself, because I'm sure a lot of it's whether it's in public domain or no one has the rights, or how that would work. But I gotta believe there's still somewhat of a market for some of that stuff, because there were so many good indies in the 80s, most people remember Miracle Man, the Alan Moore series, but there was a lot of stuff that have kind of slipped down the memory hole.
Oh, for sure. A lot of stuff's just getting lost, and that's where I mean, it is, to the earlier point, I wonder at times if there was an opportunity to pull some people together. You do a super chat type of scenario where it's like 2 hours, we're going to see how much money we can raise. We're going to try and grab some rights for some books that are falling out of, completely out of the idea, and just take that money and then use it to put it up somewhere. And I just, I don't know. There's a lot of ideas around that's concerned, but I would like to start putting some money into some of these books, but in particular, the 80s, I think, is becoming this lost era. And I really want to make sure that stuff is saved somewhere. So,
well, the problem is it's been so long now that when the 80s hit their nobody gives a crap period, and the dealers took them out of the quarter boxes because they could no longer even get a quarter out of them.
Yeah.
And I'm sure a lot of them found their way into landfills. Hopefully some of them found their way into warehouses, and now it's time to get them out of the warehouses and back into the shops, because I think if people discover that stuff, they'll realize just how good a lot of those comics were. And if I can answer Parallax's question, I have a channel. It's more of a joke than an actual channel, but I do I do stuff with Wes on Thinking Critical, and I love comics. And when Perch needs a pinch hitter, I'm here.
I'm always happy to have you on. No, I'm always happy to talk to you, and it's just good we got the chance to talk about some of this stuff. I'm going to be expanding some of the retros. Like I said, I do have several interviews lined up and coming. I've got some pretty cool names. I think a lot of people from the past that maybe you haven't heard of, but I hope you don't let that stop you and you listen to the stuff. I think I can say that Glenn Greenberg is coming on to talk about his time in the 90s as a Marvel editor. That is an absolute will blow you away interview to listen to. He's got great stories to tell. So I hope you definitely tune in for that one. And yeah.
Perch, I don't mean to interrupt, but I knew that. And last but certainly not least, I do a criminal cast stream with the criminally underrated Ash on Comics.
Ash on Comics is a great channel. Absolutely.
No set schedule for it, but we basically take a Brubaker book and dissect it. And it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy doing those. So my apologies, Ash, for that error of omission.
I'm always very thankful when Ash comes and joins me on this stream as well. I get really, people don't maybe not understand, but I feel so douchey asking people to come onto the stream. I just always feel like I'm really imposing on people. It's just how I am. But I always have appreciated all the people who have come in and helped the channel. It's really awesome. I'm very humbled by all the stuff we get. It's always weird to me because this is, I never intended for it to get this big or anywhere close to it. So it's fun. But yes, I think Jim Shooter's coming up. With any luck, we'll get a time. Some other people that I don't know if they want me mentioning their names, but we all have some pretty good interviews. I would love to get John Byrne, but I don't see that happening. But who knows?
Now, will the Shooter one be live, or will you film it as a video? And then
I'll film it. Yeah, I film these.
That would be a great one to do live, because I imagine the comment section would light up like Macy's Christmas tree.
I'm always happy to do it live. I mean, just full disclosure, when I do these interviews, I always give people the option because I want them to just talk freely and have some thoughts open. So if people accidentally say something they don't want to say, then I give them the option of clipping it out. I give them that respect. It's not to hide anything. It's just, I want them to not worry about, what they're saying where. And then when they get comfortable, like you've heard, Jeff Thorne's come on, Sean's come on. We're going to have, we'll do more and more. And absolutely, I would have Alex DeCampi. I'd have Magus Visaggio. I'd have these people. I'd like to hear their side of the story too, whoever they happen to be. So hopefully we'll get a lot of different names on here until the point where they all start to figure out that the each other are on the channel, and then everyone will stop wanting to support it at once. So I look forward to that.
Well, and by the way, I said, never hesitate to ask any of us to come on, because I said I think I can speak for anybody you've asked. It's it's fun to do these, and we're all in this because we love comics, and one thing comic geeks have no problem doing is talking comics.
No, it's absolutely true. And I think to a lot of the names being thrown out, I have this feeling that a lot of people would probably, a lot of creators would do it. I always feel like a complete asshole asking them. It sounds weird, but I'm like, these people are busy and I hate bothering them. So that's my own hang up. I'll get over it. It'll be good. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks, some pages get shown and I can talk some timing. I'm waiting for some proofs to come back from a printer. So we'll talk about those projects as well. But Eric, thank you very much for spending all the time with me. I really appreciate all the time today.
Oh, thanks for asking me to jump on.
Yeah. And all the people on the chat, thank you very much for showing up. Nobody's downvoted this yet, so you got to get in there and do that. What's wrong with you? But thank you for all the support. Lots more stuff coming, and most importantly, it's geeky. I've got all these numbers. I've got the newsstands for now 70s, 80s, and 90s, and that's just gonna blow you away. So you're gonna love that. But thanks again, and Eric, have a great night.
You too. Good night, kids.
Good night. Thanks for listening.